The scene begins with the main character, Kentaro Yamada, who lives with his beloved cat Nini and dog Max. For Kentaro, these two were like family. He worked in the sales department of a large electronics company and was doing well there, and one morning he brought breakfast to Max and Nini. He thought that many years ago he lost his parents in a tragic accident, and now only Max and Nini remained by his side. After feeding, Kentaro drinks a cup of tea and then prepares delicious food for himself. When he takes a bite, he thinks the food is unexpectedly tasty. He then asks Max and Nini if they have already eaten. After breakfast, he exercises with his pets and talks to them about work. Although it is not a hobby, he enjoys it. Then he also tells them that it is time for a walk. When they walk together, Kentaro notices how much Max and Nini love their walks, but doubts whether Nini can be considered a true lover of walks, because her steps are slow and deliberate. When they approach the pedestrian crossing, suddenly Kentaro hears the roar of an approaching truck. Before he can react, the truck hits him. Everything goes black. Kentaro's eyes are closed. He hears someone talking about a problem, as if everything was supposed to unfold differently. Then he wakes up in an unfamiliar place, wearing strange clothes, and hears an irritating voice. The sun is shining brightly ahead. Looking around, Kentaro sees bright flowers and towering mountains in the distance. He feels a surge of joy seeing the clear and spacious sky. He checks his glasses. He begins to doubt whether this is a dream and whether he should believe everything, when suddenly a voice asks if Kentaro can hear it. Kenta looked over his shoulder and was frightened to see a squirrel there. The squirrel greeted him and explained that Kenta is now no longer alive. Suddenly he saw a beast in the distance. Panic seized him as the beast rushed at him very quickly. Kenta was shocked and said that he had already been there. The squirrel continued and explained that the world was on the brink of collapse and needed saving. She resurrected Kenta as a sign of gratitude for his role in entering this reality. When everything was fixed, the world he came from became stable, and his very presence brought it harmony. The squirrel asked if he understood everything, and Kenta, still confused, replied that he did not quite understand what was happening. The squirrel explained that Kenta, arrival in this world, helped save this world, and now he would have to live here happily. Even before Kenta could understand this, the squirrel disappeared. It was tasty and sweet. Just as he returned, he noticed a bag nearby. Curious, he opened it and found water, a blanket, a raincoat, and 6 small packets with, there were gold and silver coins, and I wondered if these coins were the currency of this new world. There was also dried meat and vegetables hidden in a small box. Food that cannot be tasted. Having finished, he rummaged through another bag and found dry beans, fruits, crackers, rock salt, and coffee beans. And he decided to slowly enjoy it. Having finished, he rummaged through another bag and found dry beans, fruits, crackers, rock salt, and coffee beans. Continuing to examine the contents of the bag, Kent found a flashlight and an oil lighter, a set of pots, a portable stove, a small kettle, plates, cups, spoons, and forks. He even found a percolator and thought that coffee could be brewed with it. The percolator looked like the one he used at school, and this made him doubt what was really happening. Still, he was grateful for all the useful things, although he had not yet found any underwear and thought he would probably manage with what he had. Then his gaze fell on a ball, which reminded him of Max and Nini. He was worried about the two of them and did not know if he would ever see them again to make them happy once more. But he was overwhelmed with disappointment when he realized he might never see them again. With this thought, he decided to move on. It was tasty and sweet. Kent immediately ran away, but the beast turned out to be too fast. When he reached for the sword, the creature approached him. Out of fear, Kendra stumbled and fell to the ground. He thought he would surely die here, and that his second life would end before it truly began. But just as he was preparing for the worst, the beast started licking him, filling him with warmth and affection. To his surprise, the beast spoke and called him master. He froze, not believing his eyes, and suddenly heard a familiar voice. It was Max. Then it was confirmed that it was really him, and explained that he was going to be taken to a shelter. He thanked Kenta for the rescue. Kenta was overwhelmed with emotions as he remembered the past. Max was once the beloved dog of the late boss. Memories flooded back, and Kent felt great relief to be with his faithful friend again. At the funeral home, a woman said that since no one took Max, he would be sent to a shelter. Kent stopped recalling the past and feeling guilty, apologized for taking Max so suddenly. Max reassured him and said it was not a problem at all. He was happy, and now they will repay their master for his kindness. Kenta is still curious about what Max meant. He was caught off guard when suddenly a giant cat appeared and began licking him. The cat spoke and said she would never forget how she was saved in the cold. Kenta froze when he realized the cat was Nini. He remembered that Nini was once a street cat whom he found in the company parking lot. After a brief discussion, he took Nini with him. When Max arrived first, Nini had a hard time adjusting. Nini called Kenta her beloved master and promised that no matter what happened, She would always protect him. Overwhelmed with emotions, Kenta hugged her and admired how fluffy her fur was. He was extremely happy to see both of his beloved pets again. At that moment, the squirrel appeared again and said he would explain a lot. Kenta looked at the squirrel a little irritably and told him not to leave things in such a place. The squirrel calmly said that he had prepared the necessary equipment for them, but advised either to gather more things themselves or buy what was needed, adding that there was a lot of money but they would have to earn it themselves. Shamil the squirrel pointed to the mountains and said that if they went that way, they would find the road to the big cities, and suggested going there and joining the Adventurers Guild as Beastmasters. Ken thought about the guild and the term Beastmaster, and couldn't shake the feeling that he was in a role-playing game. Interested, he asked Shamul if he understood Ken's concerns, especially regarding the difficulties of reading in this new world. Shamu assured him that all races in this world speak one language, and he had already configured the system so that Kent could understand it. Kent felt relieved, realizing that he would somehow manage. Shamgal continued to explain that this world is parallel and slightly shifted from theirs. Kent aloud wondered if this was real and why it was almost indistinguishable from his world. Shamgal explained that no world can be completely safe, and even here there are always risks. Kent doubted whether he would have enough strength to live freely in this world, without certain roles or quotas, and live peacefully alongside Max and Nini. Shamu reassured him that he could, and Kent would be able to buy a house and settle somewhere, or, if he wished, become a beastmaster of the highest rank, take apprentices, and live as he wanted. The feeling of freedom might prompt him to set out on a journey and explore this new world. He introduced himself officially, said his name was Samuel Delasia, and that he would be watching over them for some time, assuring Kent that if they needed help, they could simply turn to him. Kent couldn't help but laugh, noting that Samuel's name sounded quite grand. Shemuel answered that he was actually the creator of this world. Kenta reacted indifferently to Shanwell's revelation, pondering the meaning of such an imagination. Samuel, sensing Kenta's doubts, said that he did not believe him, and explained that he deliberately made his form cute. Suddenly, the shame turned into a huge dragon. Ken also jumped back in fear and shame, seeing his reaction, explained that he could take any form he wished. Shamuel released a fiery attack with a roar, which for a moment engulfed the area in flames. When the flames subsided, he again took the form of Kentus. When Shamuel approached him in the likeness of Kentus, Kenta, already quite frightened, asked him to return to his true appearance. Shamuel, smiling, transformed again into his usual squirrel form. Shamuel explained that not only humans live in this world, but also many other races, including magical creatures and gem monsters, and added that when such monsters were defeated, they turned into gemstones. Kenta became interested and asked what those stones were for, and Shamil explained that they served as fuel because the core of monsters was actually a stone, and when they were defeated, they returned to their original form as stone. Kenta, who wanted to know the difference between magical beasts and gem monsters, asked. Sham explained that gem monsters did not have bodies and turned into gems when defeated, whereas magical beasts were living creatures with physical forms that were caught for various materials: meat, skin, bones, organs, and more. Shemville advised Kenta to gather as many such resources as possible, and said that monsters made of crystals and magical beasts could be sold at the guild. Thanks to Kenta's ability to control beasts, he could make them his allies. Kenta noticed that this sounded good. Shamal suggested taking a slime on the journey, and as soon as he said this, he disappeared. Ken noted that Shamil was very elusive. Then he began to think about slime. Max suggested Ken ride on his back because it would be faster and safer, and Ken asked if Max really agreed, and Max assured him. Kenta turned onto his back. Max told him to hold on tight so as not to fall during the movement. After that, Max started running. Kenta was thrilled by the speed and said it was amazing. Max explained that they were now heading to Slimest. After a day of running, they entered the forest, and Samuel said that the world was full of places where Jim Monster appeared, so this was the perfect place for monster hunting. After some time, they finally found a slime nest. Shembel explained that such nests often occur along ley lines. Kenta thought about whether it was difficult to reach this moment. And then he asked about the people of this world, and Shem answered with a question, whether Kenta did not know that the world was on the brink of collapse. He added that although some people might know about this, they would do nothing. Suddenly the situation could worsen, and everyone would be shocked. Kenta noted that this seemed reckless, but then decided that there was no point in dwelling on it. He stood up and said that slime appeared in such huge quantities. He wondered if Max and Nini were scared. Max replied that they would keep their distance for now. Shem appeared on Kenta's shoulder and calmed him, saying that there was no need to worry, and that he was strong. Shem advised Kenta to take it as training, and to fight the slimes bravely. Kenta did not understand what kind of game this was. Shamel replied that it was simply to teach him the basics of control. Then Kenta slid and came across the German side. Shamuel told him not to cut the slimes yet, because they first needed to be weakened. Kenta noted that Shamuel should have said this earlier. Then he hit another slime to make it weaker, and lifted it when it tried to escape. Kenta then asked Shamuel what to do with the slime. Shamuel explained that to tame the slime, Kenta needed to talk to it and ask it to join. Kenta agreed and invited the slime that wanted to join his team. The slime gladly agreed and greeted Kenta, calling him master. Ken said the voice sounded very cute and unusual. He didn't even know where it came from. Shamuel told him to keep holding the slime. When Kenta did so, the slime endowed him with the abilities to store, preserve, and cleanse, and promised to work diligently. Kenta wondered if this was like leveling up. Shamu replied that Kenta was close to the answer. Kenta wanted to learn about the slime's abilities. Shamu explained that in the storage one could keep all inanimate things, and preservation prevented things from spoiling, and then asked Kenta to put a gem he had previously collected into the slime. The slime settled in Kenta's body and said it could store as much as its master desired and retrieve things as needed. Shamuel continued and explained that cleansing would remove dirt. Kenta wondered if this was like washing, and he noticed that the ability to keep anything clean and fresh is an amazing skill. He began to worry that this was suitable for storing monster corpses and different from storing food. But Shamuel reassured him that he was worrying about strange things for nothing, because he can simply clean everything. Slime mask. Kenta, take good care of it. Then Kent got another slime and said that now everything was fine. The transparent one was named Aqua, and the light pink one was named Sakura. Sakura will take care of the food, and Aqua will handle other matters. Shamuel said that teamwork is going well so far. Kent asked how much more time was needed to reach the city. Shamu replied that if they walk calmly, they can be there by the evening of the next day, and if they run, they will be there the same night. Kenta was worried whether it was safe to set up camp here. Shamuel reassured him that with his animals nearby, most monsters would keep their distance. Shamingo noted that the sun was still high in the sky, and suggested they try something bigger together. Kenta pointed at a bird but hesitated because it seemed very large. Shia Mill said that Kenta used to grasp everything quickly. He wanted to tame the hawk, so Samuel insisted on going, and Kenta hesitated, noting that the hawk is large in flight, making it seem impossible to catch. Just as a hawk flew overhead, Ken flinched. He wondered if such large birds really exist. Shamil told Kenta to be the bait and pointed towards Max and Nini, who would back him up. Although Max and Nini agreed, Kenta did not want to hear that he would have to be the bait. Don't worry, Sham will reassure him that it was just a tutorial. Kenta asked how long the tutorial would last. Nini intervened and said that if Kenta was left alone and the hawk attacked, she would shoot it down, and then Kenta would have to tame the bird, and Kenta considered that risky. When the hawk approached, he felt both excitement and fear. He asked Max and Nini to protect him. Finally, the hawk swooped down on Kenta. But Nini struck first, and the hawk fell to the ground. Then Max also attacked the hawk. Shamil ordered Kenta to tame it now. Ken has to ask the hawk if it wants to join the party, and the hawk agreed to follow him. When he was tamed, the hawk shrank and sat on Kenta's hand. Introduces himself as Falco. She explained that she could grow enough to carry him, and that she was pleased to meet him. Shamil told Kenta that he had successfully tamed his first 5 pets, and now needed to create a Beastmaster emblem, and Kenta was interested if there were other types of emblems. Samuel said that the emblem was clear proof that he had mastered the creatures, and that monsters with this emblem could differ from others when attacked. Shamu will not write a page with a pen, will not appear before Kenta, and will not ask him to make an emblem that suited him. Kenta grinned and drew one. Showing this to Shamil, Shamil asked him to choose a name for himself. Kenta suggested the name Kentaro Yamada, but Sham will reply that most people did not have surnames, so a nickname would be more appropriate. Ken then suggested Kana. Shamul nodded, said his name, and created something in the air, asking Kentata to show his hand. Shamel then places the item in Kindis's palm. Then Shembel ordered Kenti to press his favorite spot on the emblem, and when he did, the emblem was imprinted where he touched. When night came, Kent decided to set up camp there. Sitting down, he first thought to light the lantern and wondered if it was a new thing, and if there was oil or other fuel for it. Sheem will ask Aqua to insert the stone that was earlier into the lighter, and then say he will give another one for the lantern. Did Kenta put one stone in the lighter and the other in the lantern? He found that the lighter now worked. He was delighted. He was very happy, and the stones really seemed to serve as fuel. Shembel explained that the source of the gems was mana, the life force that flows in all living beings, especially in their bodies, and if people run out of it, they will die. Kenta asked if they needed anything else besides food, and Shane told him that food was the only thing they needed, and that the Jonies would take care of them for a few days. Max and Nini said that they would hunt by themselves and absorb mana from the monsters they defeated. Kenta was stunned and said how amazing it was. He recalled that others used to rely on him before. Although it brought him relief, he also felt a bit lonely, because caring for creatures meant holding their lives in his hands. He said that his food was made of dried meat and dried vegetables, water and rock salt. All his pets were sleeping. Kenta enjoyed the food, commenting on how strange it was that simple meat and vegetables could be so tasty. For dessert, he took out a treat and saw that it was still full, although he ate one yesterday. Shem will explain that this was called a logical bonus, which we increased by 1 every day, and will say that it was easy to handle. Meanwhile, the slimes began cleaning around, and Kenta was impressed by it. He noticed that it was his first night in this new world. He thought about his past, and worried whether he had caused problems for his boss, colleagues, and friends. Fortunately, it seemed you could enjoy this new world, and he hoped that in his old world people were doing well. Shamu will make Kenta up. Yawning and stretching, Nini greeted Kenta. It was then that Max began licking him, and said that he was not awake at all and could not agree with Max, and said that he wanted to wash his face and body, but the city was too far away. Suddenly slime stuck to him and he felt strange. He asked what Sakura was doing. Then he noticed that his skin had become very smooth and thought that this might be a cleansing process. He thanked Sakura and said that he would count on her again. Ken then thought that in the morning he could not do without a cup of coffee. A lot of time had passed since he last used a percolator. He had not yet checked the coffee beans. When he looked at his water bottle, he was surprised that it was completely full. Although he got somewhat used to this yesterday, Sham will explain that the water bottle automatically refills over time. Ken was impressed and said that it was very convenient and a little scary. Shembel asked Ken to explain in more detail. Kenta replied that people can survive a week without food, but without water they will die in a few days, and called the water bottle a life-giving device. When he was making coffee, the water boiled and started to darken, so the coffee was ready. After making the coffee, Ken took a sip and realized that the drink was strangely mild, even lighter than filter coffee. He then checked his bag and wondered if they should take the highway. At that moment, he grabbed his hand and pulled. Ken needs to ask what Nini was doing. To his surprise, there was a snake in Nini's mouth. He got scared and told her not to come closer. Sheem will explain that people were vulnerable to the poison and will suggest Kenta tame the snake. Kenta immediately refused because he did not want to touch the snake. But Sham will urge him to act quickly. Trembling could not touch the snake's head with his fingertip and ask if it wanted to join their company. The snake agreed and suddenly grew in size. Kenton named him Sir Pan and welcomed him. Then he stamps her pants. He made the snake shrink to a small size and said that in this form she seemed cute. Sir Pan replied that he would try to hide as much as possible, apologized in advance, and Ken calmed the snake, saying that in such a small form she was not scary at all. Shamult told Kenta that he had reworked Sir Pan and turned him into a top poisonous large green python. Kenta noted that large poisonous snakes are quite scary. Shamul reassured him, saying not to worry because with Sir Pan, other snakes would keep their distance. Kenta agreed and suggested focusing again. Then she asked if he wanted to ride on her back. Kenta agreed. When he sat on Nina, she started running. She asked him to hold on tight. They moved so fast that Kent felt like he was riding Maxie. Then he asked Nina to run more carefully. Finally, they reached the main road and saw a cart with several people. Cantor noticed that the city must be nearby. When he approached the group with his animals, the people were shocked by the appearance of the creatures. Understanding why they were scared, Kenta quickly explained that these were his tamed animals and told them not to attack. One man drew a sword in defense. Another said he had never seen such beasts before. He was especially interested in the variants Red King and Hellhound. A third man said that no one keeps such beasts, then asked Kenta what kind of beastmaster he was. Shemuel turned to Kenta and quietly explained that now in this world, there are almost no beastmasters left. Kenta was a little surprised. He asked if this meant that the world was falling apart. Shembel replied that it would take a long time. Kenta calmed them down, said that everything would be fine, and then ordered to hide the swords. He asked if someone could take him to the town, and one of the men inquired if Kenta was heading there so he could rest. Confused, Kenta agreed. As they walked, he heard the group discussing these creatures and wondering what others would think of them. Kenta doubted whether he should have stayed hidden. Then the man asked where Kenta came from and requested to see his documents. He will intervene and advise Kenta to tell them that he is from the Shadow Rift Mountains. Kenta repeated this and the group was surprised. After a brief apology for the delay, they wish him a safe journey. As they walked, Kenta could not get the thought of the mountains cut by shadows out of his mind, and Sham explained that those were jungles filled with incredibly strong monsters. The area was rich in ley line energy. Legendary and mysterious creatures lived here, so ordinary adventurers avoided it. Ken noted that it sounded terrible and feared that such a dangerous place would scare people away. But Sham replied that the beasts Ken had detained were extremely strong, so there was no need to worry. He added that if Ken ever felt uncertain, he should simply say that he was from there, and that would be enough to calm people down. They continued their journey, and as if noticed a small town in the distance. He asked aloud if there was a rest stop, and Shamu confirmed it. They walked along a road that seemed safe, but other travelers looked nervous when they saw them. When they approached the city entrance, the guards politely greeted them. One of the guards noticed the size of Ken's summoned beasts and seemed ready to intervene, but Ken calmly explained that these were his summoned beasts. The guard then asked to see Ken's identification, and Ken admitted that he did not have one. The guard said that the entrance cost 1 silver coin per person, and 1 copper coin for each large baggage and animal. Ken pointed to Falco and asked about the fee for him, but the guard replied that no fee would be charged for Falco. After handing over the required coins, the guard reminded Kenta to be careful with controlling his summoned beasts. Kenta nodded in agreement. When they were entering the city, people were clearly frightened upon seeing Kenta and his creatures. Ken said that, judging by the walls he had seen before, he did not expect the city to be so large. It resembled more of a tourist spot. He thought that the main thing now was to find the Adventurers Guild, but Shamil admitted that he did not know where it was. Disappointed, Kenta muttered to himself that now he would have to handle everything alone. It was then that he noticed the man he had seen earlier on the path. He recognized him. The man greeted him, explained that he was from the Adventurers Guild, and asked if Kenta was interested in joining. Ken said he was looking for the guild, and the man offered to guide him, so Ken asked why he was so eager to help. The man said he was interested in Kenta's familiars, and since Kenta came from the mountains cut by shadow, he considered them companions in adventures. The man added that Kenta seemed a bit naive, and he decided it was the right time to take advantage of that. Kenta smiled and remarked that the man was very straightforward. He shook the man's hand, accepted the offer of help, and introduced himself, and the man named himself Hector. When they came to the guild, the travelers nearby seemed frightened by the Kenta's beasts. Hector approached and calmed them down, saying that everything was fine. He explained that the Kentis creatures were loyal to him and everyone could relax. When the people got scared, one man said it was funny, and another showed a small beast on his shoulder and said it was the biggest creature he could handle. Ken calmed them, assuring that these were really his beasts, and asked to put away the weapons. And Hector, stepping forward, told them not to worry. Hector urged Ken, so they moved on. When they approached the reception desk, Ken told the woman that he wanted to register as an adventurer. The administrator was surprised that he really wanted to join their guild. They thanked him and gave a form to fill out. When Kenta began filling out the form, the administrator asked if he was a friend of Hector, and Hector confirmed it. And he noted that it was a bit risky to let Kenta walk the streets alone. But he was glad about Kenta's right choice. The receptionist thanked Hector, and she said that she did not believe there was a tamer who could befriend such huge beasts, calling Kenta a master of beasts. Kenta asked with interest about the difference between a tamer and a master of beasts. Sham explained that beginners were usually called masters of beasts, and those who could carve the tamer's emblem were considered more experienced, adding that Kenta could no longer be considered a simple tamer. When Ken was filling out the form, he thought that the gods probably did not protect him, and noticed that he could read and write in this language without difficulty, which in itself was a small victory. After filling out the form, Kenta handed it to the administrator and asked if everything was in order. She reviewed it and became interested in the mention of Shadow Slash. Then she told him that the registration fee was 1 silver coin, and asked him to place his palm on the magic circle on the table. When Kenta did this, she covered his hand with a cloth, and light began to shine from below. A map appeared from the magic circle. She handed it to Kenta and explained that this was his registration card. Kenta was surprised. He looked at the card with interest and muttered to himself about how everything works. She interrupted him and joked that he shouldn't talk like that, especially when there are 2 monsters nearby. Kenta then asked where he could stay with his giant beasts, and the receptionist replied that no inn could accommodate them, but they could settle in the guild dormitory. Kenta was shocked and asked if the place was suitable, and the administrator explained that although the guild housing was not luxurious, there was a garden, a bed, and a water source, but no food was provided. He sighed but agreed to the arrangement. He said it would be fine. The receptionist then asked for payment, 1 silver coin per night and another for the large beasts. Kent decided to pay for 10 days because he planned to explore the surroundings, and the receptionist agreed to accommodate him for that period. After the deal, Kenta approached Hector, asked if he was finished, thanked him, and offered to treat him to dinner. Hector replied that as soon as Kent left his bags, he would take him to where they could join the others. When Kenta entered the room, he was surprised at how special it was, much better than he had imagined. The man told him that this room was once reserved for many beast trainers and was always fully occupied, but now there were not so many guests. He handed Kent the key to the room and explained that inside the water zones were divided, so Kent could freely inspect them. Entering the pond, Ken finds the kitchen and the water source. It seemed a bit strange to me. Samuel explained that the upper part of the water zone was for drinking and the lower part was for washing. He advised Ken not to wash anything dirty in the upper compartment. Samuel finished the explanation and said that he might sometimes appear and disappear, but would always be nearby if Kent needed help. Kent thanked Samuel and said he would count on him in trouble. He then went to eat. Later, Ninny came and told Kent that she would look after the affairs. Then she lay down on the bed, and Kent could not help but notice that she was extremely cute. He hugged her and said that although she had grown up, she had not changed at all. After some time, Kent met Hector, who noted that it seemed the number of adventurers had decreased. One of Hector's company members offered Kent to freely use the open standing area outside, and Kent thanked them for the offer. A woman with beer approached and asked if those huge creatures were his relatives, and Kenton nodded and assured her that he would watch their behavior, so she would not worry. She smiled and noted that Max was especially friendly, and added that it was incredible. Hector led Kenta to the dining area, where there was a buffet with a large variety of dishes and drinks, and Kenta realized that it was self-service. Hector raised a glass of beer for a toast and introduced himself as a swordsman. The young guy introduced himself as Lime, a spearmaster, and the older man addressed Kenta as Balloon, the axe lord. The woman introduced herself as Franz, a sorceress. Kenta was impressed by the variety of talented people around, and he wondered if he could also learn magic. When everyone started eating, Kenta found the food incredibly tasty. He was amazed at how pleasant it was, and even in this new world the culture seemed familiar. The meat smelled slightly of herbs, and he wondered which ones exactly, but did not ask. The soup had a pleasant, refined taste, and the butter was soothing and familiar. Others were drinking beverages. He insisted that Kenta drink more. It seemed to him that they had not finished eating yet. Hector explained that as adventurers they had few restrictions, and they could take any tasks at their own risk. Many asked to collect precious stones and materials and, of course, to exterminate monsters. Hector suggested Kenti start with a few simple requests to better understand. He also reminded Kenti that any large familiar, like Max, must wear a collar, and Kenta noted that he already has a ribbon for Max. Hector nodded, said it was a good temporary solution, but advised Kenti to find a proper collar next time. Did Kenta agree? Max noticed that the smell of alcohol had become quite strong. Kent returned to the bartender and asked the price for 5, and the bartender replied that it would only cost him 1 gold coin in total. Kent stood up to leave, but Hector asked if he was already going. Kenta smiled and told him to have a good time and do whatever he wants, and that he would catch up with them later. Hector and the rest continued celebrating, and Kenta returned to the room. When Kenta returned, Ninny greeted him and he sat next to the bed. Shamu woke him up and said it was already morning, and he should not fall asleep as if he were camping overnight. Kenta groggily replied that his body was sore and stiff. Then he asked Sakura to help him feel better. After she did that, he felt unexpectedly energetic. Ken went to the kitchen to make coffee. After a sip, he said it was very tasty, and wondered if there was any coffee in this world. Shamu replied that a lot of interesting things happen in this world, but coffee is not rare. Kent said he had heard from Hector and others about the morning market in the square. He thought about going to see it and asked if everyone would go with him. Nini, sitting on the bed, looked a little more withdrawn than usual. When Kent said this, she denied being a recluse. He encouraged her to go with them, saying that this way the townspeople would get used to them not being a threat. When they get to the market, Kent was impressed by the variety of goods available. He said they have a bunch of things here, and it's time to gather some ingredients. He tasted a fruit and found it incredibly sweet. Then he went to buy ingredients and asked the seller how it is best to eat it, and the seller replied that fried or boiled is tasty in any form. Even raw, it has a pleasant taste. Then he found a hamburger, took a bite, and felt that the spices were very tasty, and the flavor was wonderful. Then he drank some coffee, and was very glad that he found all this. He gathered several familiar products and commented that this was exactly what one should expect from a neighboring parallel world. He collected quite a few things for the journey and began packing them into Sakura. He put bananas, strawberries, cherries, potatoes, carrots, lettuce leaves, spinach, coffee beans, and burgers into storage. Saka assured him that she would take care of it. Next, he approached the butcher section and noticed that it was quite cold here. After buying several items, the seller reminded him to make sure he eats them all. Only then did she realize that Kento turned out to be the very same incredible beast tamer everyone was talking about. Kento was a little confused. The woman continued, telling that her grandfather traded wood and back then slimes jumped around their house. Kento showed her his slime, and the woman said that it was the first time she had seen such a creature. She touched it and realized that it was not only very smart, but also smooth, shiny, and cute. Kent explained where he got it from, and when he was about to leave, the lady thanked him and invited him to return soon. Kenton knew he had gathered a lot, and the pantry was full of treats. That night he decided it was time to cook a steak. He thought to go in search of food, maybe to collect precious stones along the way. Nini agreed with him. They soon reached the forest, and Sham will show them the burrow of the brown-horned rabbit. Kenta asked if Samuel Fahey could handle it. Max, who was also going hunting, wished Kenta luck and asked Nina to do the same. Kenta wondered if Ravisi would be tasty if he ate them, and Shamu replied that he was a monster made of gems, implying that it was not quite the same. The place where Kenta hunted was covered with holes, and Shembel explained that it was a burrow. Kenta immediately asked Nina to shrink. Shamuel continued explaining to Kenta that beasts and monsters are completely different. Beasts were originally creatures of the world that transformed due to the influence of ley lines, which allowed them to grow, but did not let them increase beyond a certain limit. On the other hand, monster gems were originally gemstones and could change their size whenever they wanted. The type of gemstone they originated from determined what kind of creature they could become. Kenta understood and asked if they should wait until the rabbit came out. Shamal suggested allowing him to change clothes in the burrow. If he dives in there, the rabbit will probably jump out. Kent agreed with the plan. After Sham goes into the burrow, they waited outside. Soon a rabbit appeared, gentle by nature, and this impressed Kenta. It is interesting how it managed to ignore the size of the hole. Sheem will explain that it was a variant, so he will suggest calling others, and Ken will reply that he hasn't even gotten used to fighting yet. The snake then grew larger to catch the big rabbit. Meanwhile, all the other familiars of Kenta began attacking the other rabbits. Kenta was satisfied with the results, and there were even a few pearls found along the way. When they finished, Max came, and Sir Pan said that almost everything was already decided. Nini went hunting, and Kentuck suggested that everyone else should go too. Shembel told him that the rabbits would need time, so he would not go further, and a small rabbit appeared from the burrow. Kenta wondered if it was still the same one, and Sheem confirmed that it had just hatched. Kenta noticed that the rabbit was scared, so he apologized to it, and asked if it would like to join his party. He later named it La Pan and warmly welcomed it. Shemgul commented that the option with time would become stronger. Kenta pressed his cheeks to the soft fur of the rabbit and marveled at how fluffy and cute it was. He lay down and thought about when they would return. Shamiel said they had time until sunset, so there was no need to hurry. Kenta thought that this was his first sword fight. Shama replied that he had gained muscles, become moderately strong, but still lacked endurance. Shamil assured him that it was all part of the training, encouraged him not to give up, and added that Kenta did very well for the first time. When Shamuel and Kenta found themselves in such a wonderful world, he wished that Kenta would enjoy life and live long and happily. Kenta did not know whether Samuel was good or bad. Samuel assured him that he was good. Closer to evening, they returned to the city entrance. One guard said that Kenta joined the rest of the guild. Kent replied that for some time he would rely on the guards, and the guards also looked satisfied. Kenta, together with his companions, entered the city, and the townspeople looked at them in surprise, and he could not shake the feeling that distant cries were fading. Then he met the receptionist, who asked if he had come to sell precious stones, and Ken replied that he had many of them. The man nearby noted that Kenta was ready to unload a large pile of valuables, and strongly asked him to show them. Kenta showed the valuables, and the spectators were impressed by how many there were. Kent sat down, and an old man came to help the woman sort through the various stones. Then the old man said it was time to discuss the price per unit and the distribution of the stones. Having reviewed everything, Kenta was surprised to learn that the sum would exceed 50 gold coins. The old man explained that precious stones were always in short supply, and from now on he would count on Kenta as their supplier. He also assured Kenta that in case of problems he should just inform him. Kenta asked if it was possible to buy a map somewhere. The woman said that maps are sold at the guild, but the old man kindly offered Kenta a map for free. Ken thanked him and opened the map, and said he would check it later. Kenta went out with his familiars, and Sham said he would be glad if Kenta quickly adapted to the world. Kenta declined this offer. When they entered their room, Kenton went straight to the kitchen to prepare something. He took out a piece of beef, which the seller called beefy, and decided to follow the clerk's advice. He easily tenderized the meat to make it softer and cut the fibers, and since there was no pepper, he decided to add more salt. Next, he picked up something that smelled like potatoes, and assuming it was really a potato, he decided to peel and boil it. Tasting a small piece, he confirmed that it was indeed a potato. He drained the water and sprinkled the potatoes with salt until they became fluffy. Then he fried the meat to perfection on both sides, filling the room with the pleasant aroma. After they took a bite, Kenta considered it very tasty. The thick pieces were perfectly tender. It was the best steak, tasted like real beef. Max asked if it was no longer part of the world. After dinner, they all went to sleep. The rabbit tried to wake Kenta. At first, he did not realize it was a rabbit and remembered Shenmue asking him not to wake up. But when he saw that it was actually a rabbit, he got up. Kenta left the room with his familiars to have some coffee, noticed it was tasty, and decided it was time to look into trinkets and baubles. Kenta entered the store, looked for something, but did not find it. The seller came out and asked what he was looking for, then was surprised to see Kenta's companions, and Kenta asked if that man had folding tables and chairs. The man confirmed they were inside, but said that animals could not enter. Ken has to ask them to weigh themselves outside. When they went inside, the man noticed Kentus's exquisite familiars, and Kenta replied that they were cute. The man showed Kenta the tables and chairs, then wondered if Kenta planned to use them outdoors. He suggested that it would be easier to carry them if they were packed like cards. Kenta thought of using slime that can store things. Shamuel noted that it was quite a rare item. You could say that this would work, and he would take one table. Then the man showed the chairs and asked Kenta to buy a smaller one. Then he ordered the slime to carry everything for him. Next, Kenta found himself in another shop full of various armors and items. He asked if Nini would like a collar. Nini replied that she would very much like something new. At that moment, the seller came out with a worried look, fearing that a beast might be hiding in the streets. Kenta explained that those beasts were his familiars and apologized. The man then realized that Kenta was a famous beastmaster in the city, and noted that it scared him a little. Ken said he was looking for a collar for Nini, but the collars in the shop were too small. The man asked for permission to touch the beasts so he could take their measurements and create something truly amazing. Kenta agreed and added that it would work like a perfect angel. The man measured the size of Nina's collar using the table, and suddenly a snake crawled out of Nina's fur, which shocked the man. He said he would not be able to handle the snake. Kenta laughed and explained that he had forgotten about the little snake that always hid in Nina's collar, but it was actually very cute, and the man wondered if that was really true. He had never seen such a creature before and noted that Sir Pan was strangely slender for his appearance. Then he asked Kenta to choose a favorite color for the collar, explaining that over time the color would blend beautifully. Nina chose a color and told Kenta, who then remarked that this beautiful raspberry shade was simply perfect. He also chose 2 more colors, and the man looked satisfied. Kenta said he would like to attach a basket or bag to Max's collar so that Lepan would not fall off, and also asked if the man could quickly make shoulder pads to make it easier for Falco Vistapu. The man began taking measurements for Max Collar's collar, said he could make any shape Kenta desired, and Kenta thanked him, saying it would help a lot, and that it seemed the man could make anything. The man said he was from the craft town of Basin, so he was confident in his skills. Kenta wondered if Basin was really a town. The man advised using leather for shoulder protection, said it would turn out a masterpiece, and suggested quickly making a few additional parts for the pole, and gave 1 gold coin in advance, saying he would pay the rest after the work was done. When they were leaving, the man asked them to come back in 3 days to pick up the items, and Ken thanked him once again and left. Then he bought many different things and said the harvest was generous, and they would have to go searching for precious stones again to cover the additional expenses. Kent noticed something and thought it might be cheese. When he approached the stall closer, he saw milk there too, and asked the saleswoman if people drank it. The saleswoman replied that they did, and added that if it was the first in the morning, one could even take fresh cheese. Kent bought several portions, said he would definitely return, and noted that this was one of Kent's best traits. After some time, Kent was writing to Max, and everyone was heading to the destination. Ken recalled what had happened 3 hours ago. When Shamu suggested next to extract the brown hard rock, it would require a lot of effort, but it could be sold for a higher price. Ken, approaching to look at the map, noticed that the name was funny and decided to examine it more carefully. He found the place Restum and began to understand the structure of the world. Shamuel noticed that it was a rough map. Kent replied and asked not to criticize, as this is a map approved by the guild, and Shemgal inquired whether this is the most accurate version the Adventurers Guild can offer. Kenta wondered why they themselves simply did not provide the details. Shemgal assured him that everything was fine, but said there was a bonus and asked Kent to close his eyes. A moment after he opened his eyes, he noticed that the map was now much more detailed. Shane will explain that with the skill of evaluative sight he will be able to see an improved map. Ken will thank him, calling it a salvation. Ken then studied the map and noticed that to the west there were the ocean, island states, and Beisan, the city of the Dwarves' Forge. There were breeding sites on the brown hard stone. When they approached the destination, Kent noted that it seemed like a desert, possibly a volcanic area, and you thought about monsters made of precious stones. Just as he thought about it, the ground beneath him began to tremble. He looked around and saw many scattered stones. They were brown and hard. Shami will summon the hammer and hand it to Kenta, ordering him to break the stones. Ken felt that the hammer was very heavy. Sham will explain that after breaking the stones they flake off and Kenta will be able to attack them. He just needs to follow the process. And Kenta finally swung the hammer. He grumbled that it was so hard to deal with when he hit the rocks. Small monsters began to appear. Both Max and Nini quickly dealt with them. Kenton noticed that the gems embedded in the rocks were unusually large. He continued to attack, and his assistants continued to destroy the monsters. After some time, Kenta hit an especially hard stone. It made his hand ache with pain. He asked Shamil if there was a way to determine this. Shamil replied that Kenta could see it himself. Because of this, Kenta unlocked more of his evaluative eye skill. Thanks to this, he could better see the monsters made of gems. Shembel explained that the gate skill Kent possessed allowed him to see what they desired. Kenta continued breaking the stones, while his assistants continued to deal with the monsters. After some time, Ken felt tired and suggested taking a break. He admitted that he could not continue much longer, especially because the monsters seemed to continue multiplying rapidly. His hands went numb, and it seemed that the city would never feel the consequences of the growing horde. Shame will say that people are quite fragile, and someone in response half-jokingly will say that at that moment he could not even hold a spoon. Shenmuel suggested gathering orange glossy moss in the valley for the elixir. Ken asked why Shenmuel did not collect it himself. Shenmuel replied that he did not need it. Ken stood up and Max said he would walk at a steady pace. "I cannot lie on my back," discovering that it is strangely comfortable and elastic. Soon he fell asleep. After some time, Sham will loosen his grip to wake him up. Ken sleepily opens his eyes and saw a deep ditch in front of him. Sheem will explain that they switched to the Falco to fly into the canyon where bright orange moss grew. Kenta was shocked by this idea and refused to do it, but with the help of slimes he managed to claim rights to Falco during its descent. He wondered why they couldn't just gather moss for him. They descended deeper into the canyon, and Kenta was jostling when he fell to the ground. Shamel told him that Kent must leave the roots intact and take only the leaves. The slimes will absorb the hole in the moss, killing the roots, which took years to recover. Max and Nini also went down, but Kenta was still in shock. He asked if they agreed to go down. They both agreed. Kenta began collecting the glowing orange moss. Shameless showed him the plate where to put the moss. After that, Shenmue gave Aqua and Sakura the ability to mix and improve. They took the moss and made an elixir from it. Then he returned it to Kenta. Shameless asked him to put his hand over the elixir. Ken felt his hand healing, and the pain disappeared. Rejoicing, Kenta immediately began collecting even more moss. He himself gathered a large amount and asked Sakura to save it for later. When he returned to the rest of the elixir he had made earlier, he found that it was gone, although he had not used it. Sham explained that the ointment quickly loses its effect, so he advised Ken to prepare it only as needed, so it will last longer, and it was recommended to use it as an ointment. Kenta thought that it might be as safe as wax or Vaseline. Raising his eyes, he said that they should return soon. Shamo agreed and added that it was almost closed, so they needed to go. Kenta noted that rain at the bottom of the valley could be a problem. Shamul assured him that everything would be fine because there would be no rain there, and they rarely visited this area. He added that their legs would be more useful at night. Kenta agreed with him. Then he asked Sakura to set up the chair and table they bought yesterday. After that, you can't upset the chair, commenting that it looked good. He knew that if they had a tent, everything would be perfect. He took out meat and sausages and noticed that they had moved a lot that day. While eating, he noticed that the food was tasty and added that he would like some baguette as well. He said that even coffee would be nice, but tea would also be wonderful, and a little more pepper. At the food points, he was already used, so it should be there. After lunch, Ken lay between Nini and Max and felt how soft and fluffy it was. He was grateful for their company and suggested resting a bit. The next morning they woke up. Kent told Max to go hunting, and he himself went to gather more glowing moss, and Max gladly agreed. And they rushed away so quickly that Kenta was shocked. It was then that Nini called Kenta and said that something interesting had happened. Kenta was curious about what it could be. Shamu said that nearby there was a territory of mountain chickens, known for their tasty meat. He suggested that Kenta try to hunt one. The guild would take care of the rest. He also noted that the feathers were a valuable material, and Nini liked this idea too. However, Kenta refused, saying that it was their hunt and he would not interfere. It was then that Max arrived, proudly announced that he had caught a mountain chicken and asked Aqua to lend it to him. He placed the chicken down. Kenta remarked how huge it was and thanked Max for the catch. Nini soon returned with another chicken, and Kenta said in surprise that they had worked quite well. He also said that he had gathered a lot of glowing moss, so it was time to return. Kenta sat on Falco to take off, and she assured him to trust her with the flight. He had an incredible experience. When they flew out of this area, he was still riding Falco and admiring how beautiful the world looked from above, then said, "Let's return to the rest of him." When he was walking to the city, the boy was delighted to see Max and Nini. He ran up to hug Nini. This surprised the boy's mother, who ran up and asked what he was doing. Then she apologized to Kent and jokingly said that if the beasts wanted to eat, They should leave the boy alone and eat her instead. Kent calmly explained that these were his familiars, and they would not attack people. And the woman was surprised by this. Meanwhile, her son began playing with Ninny, marveling at how soft and fluffy her fur was. The woman asked Kent with interest if she could touch them too. He nodded in agreement. She gently reached out her hand to stroke Ninny's fur. Ken felt relieved knowing that some people were not afraid to interact with his familiars. After some time, when the woman and her son left, the city guards greeted Kent. One of them noted that they hadn't seen him for a long time and asked if he had traveled to a distant city, to which Kent replied that he had just been hunting and sleeping in the wilderness. The guards were interested and then asked if they could touch Kentus's familiars. Kent agreed, and they happily petted Nini and Max. Later, after selling a few mountain hens, Kenta spoke with an old man who had overheard the deal. The man inquired about the guild, and Kenta said he had heard that they could handle the sale. He also asked if they would buy half of the hens, and the man agreed. Ken then offered to exchange some brown hard gemstones. The old man was surprised, and noted that these stones were valued as fuel for street lamps. They did not give much light but burned for a long time and served well as fuel. Gentlemen were in short supply for a long time, so they were highly valued and warmly welcomed in every city, starting with the capital Inberg. The old man said that these stones would light up the city, and they agreed to settle the details of the meat and jewelry trade the next day. That night, as he walked with his companions, Kenta pondered the mana cycle in the world. Mana produces gemstones. Gemstones give rise to monsters. Over time, gemstones become fuel. Monster bodies are used as materials, and everything eventually returns to mana. People depend on many things. This comforted Kenta. He felt a deep connection with the natural rhythms of the world. He also found peace in the moonlit silence as he walked. You can stop by the cream cheese store, and he bought 10 of each kind. The seller thanked him for the purchase. Then he gathered freshly baked bread, black pepper, and a grinder, and was glad that he finally found a quality one. He also took some spices, pens, and ink. Together with a new tent for his future hikes, Kent planned to visit another city soon and decided to continue collecting precious stones until then. He was satisfied because he knew he could continue helping the townspeople on his way. The next day, Shamu told Kenty that there was a good place nearby and asked if he wanted to catch woodlice or golden butterflies. They too set off to the place, where they met and defeated many giant woodlice, giant frogs, and the giant caterpillar could quickly understand that caterpillars were much worse than the snakes they had fought before, much more dangerous and harder to fight. Despite the difficulties, Kenta encouraged his familiars and urged them to stay strong and keep fighting. After some time, they noticed a gigantic butterfly. Shannon notes that sometimes you just have to work hard to take advantage of an opportunity. Golden butterflies did not attack, so when they descended to the flowers, Kenty had to decide what to do. He also said that the wings of these butterflies are sold expensively, so he advised Kenty to collect just the body, and Kenta became interested in whether materials could be made from them. Shemgal explained that adult butterflies had hardened wings treated with Dorgon techniques, which then turned into beautiful transparent glass. Kenta was a little surprised when he heard that the wings could be turned into glass. At that moment, Falco ran up and immediately attacked the giant butterfly. When the butterfly flew up to Kenta, he quickly sliced the creature's body with his sword. I feel a surge of pleasure from the smooth step. However, the giant wings fell on him and he called Nini for help, half-jokingly said that he felt doomed. When Nini helped him, Kenta aloud doubted that the wings would really turn into glass as Shamil described. Sakura, as always efficient, put the wings in her inventory. When they were catching their breath, they suddenly heard a noise, and Kenty's familiars immediately became alert. Shamuel signaled Kenty to retreat. His face was serious. Kenta doubts if they need anything. He was about to ask when he noticed a large jointed beetle approaching. Shamil told him to stay behind and let the familiars handle it. However, Kentus's assistants quickly objected, considering it unfair that he sat aside while they fought. At that moment, Falco, as always confident, rushed at the beetle, declared it her prey, quickly grabbed it and lifted it into the air. The others watched with envy and muttered that it was unfair. Talco then threw the beetle to the ground. We landed with a dull thud, and was immediately pierced by its own horn. To their surprise, the beetle turned into a large precious stone. The horns were much larger than those they had seen before, and Shamil said he was lucky because the horns were a valuable material, and could serve as a weapon during transformation. And it can be noted that it looked beautiful and metallic. Shamuel explained that hardened wings were rare, but from strong monsters with gems, materials sometimes drop that can be used to forge powerful weapons, such as a sword. Ken will suggest that he might have a sword made from such materials, and Sham will advise finding a skilled weaponsmith, for example one in Bison. Kenta agreed, said that it was a good plan, and they decided to head to Basan as the next step. That evening they brought precious stones to the guild. 2 men were stunned and delighted to see so many. The old man said that the light of the brownstone frogs lasted long, and they earned 20 gold coins and meat from the previous day, plus 10 gold coins for today's catch. Kenta noted that it was a considerable amount. The old man said that Kenta helped a lot and even deserved the golden butterfly wings. Kenta replied that rest also helped him, so he was glad to repay. Then the man brought 50 kilograms of chicken and asked Kenta to take it with him. Kent restored it with the help of Sapker. When they later walked down the street, Kenton noticed how much brighter the street lamps had become. Shame explained that more lamps had been lit. People around rejoiced at the increased light and said how long they had lived in darkness. They also noticed that there were more monsters and talked about resuming hunting soon. Ken returned to the room and said that he got mountain chickens along with bread, butter, and flour, then added that it was for dinner. He planned to prepare pounded chicken fillet, season it with spices, and fry the bread in a pan. He was going to coat the chicken in breadcrumbs, using a flour and a beaten egg, before slowly frying it in a pan with butter. He carefully prepared mountain chicken and made juicy cutlets. After taking the bicycle, Kento was delighted with the taste, the perfect harmony of butter and red crumbs, and juicy fluffy chicken. He made a sandwich from the cutlet, adding bread and cheese. He took a bite and felt a rush of excitement. Noticed that in this world he becomes richer both in taste and in experience. Later, Kenta went for a walk and entered a store for a drink. He could buy many things, but did not find tea leaves, so he noticed a pastry shop nearby and decided to go in. Inside he saw a sign about new bread with cookies, which was sweet and tasty. He bought one to try, and it turned out just as he suspected. It turned out that it was melon pan. When he was about to leave, he heard a familiar voice, turned around, and saw Ninny. She hugged him and couldn't understand that the woman and the child who first befriended him were there. It turned out that the woman had opened a shop. Kenta asked if she was selling something, but she explained that trade was slow that day because the location was bad and luck was not on their side. Kenta said he wanted to buy all the goods because the vegetables looked fresh and the small items seemed useful. The woman replied that it was good, but Kenta explained that she was the first person who was not afraid of his familiars, so he wanted to help her. He insisted that he would gladly buy everything from her. She agreed and told him that it would be 20 silver coins in total, and thanked him for his generosity. The woman and her son were delighted because they sold everything that day. The boy said he was hungry. The woman noted that it was already afternoon. Then the boy asked Kenta if the food he ate was tasty. Kenta smiled and said it was sweet and delicious, and offered the boy a piece. While the boy was eating, he said it was very tasty. The woman thanked Kent for sharing the treat with them. Then Ken went to the left and went to the nearest store to buy a collar. The seller showed him a collar, and Kent said it was very nice. Nini, who was with him, also liked it. Then the seller put a rabbit collar on Max, and Kent noticed that it had a lid. The man also showed him a perch for Falco. Kent agreed that everything looked great. However, the shopkeeper said that the work took longer than expected, and for that he asked for 4 more gold coins. Ken thanked him for his effort, and the man clarified that the price was not the result of bargaining. Kent was still doubtful and asked if this additional charge was not a scam. The man assured him it was not, and Kent said he would never accuse him of that. He thanked him again for the excellent work. The seller was touched and told Kent that if he ever needed anything else, he could confidently ask. Ken needs to ask about the saddle and whether it will fit Max. The man replied that it could be fixed a little, and asked if the belt would fit. When the saddle was put on Max, he hoped it wouldn't be too tight. Kenta asked how it felt when wrapped around him, and the man assured that it held firmly, and the reins would be attached to the collar. After everything was secured in place, Kenta noticed that the fit was perfect. Max said it didn't feel heavy at all. The man explained that the size might need a little adjustment, but once it was done, Ken remarked that it looked very cool. Max confirmed there was no tightness, and Kenta said that was great. Kenta went to eat and drink beer, which he really liked. It was then that Hector and friends arrived, and he said that now the whole town was talking about Kenta. He said that a request had come from the guild that might interest Kenta, and asked if he wanted to hear about it. Hector explained that in 3 villages around Restum, fruit orchards were being damaged, and hoof-like tracks were found at the sites, and Kenta wondered if it was the jaw of a monster hunter. Hector explained that the animals didn't eat everything indiscriminately, only the necessary crops, and there was a high probability that people were involved. He also said that it could be the work of a trainer or tamer. Hector added that Kenta could decide for himself whether to take on this job or not. But the village was poor, so the reward would be modest. And if it escalated into a clash with the Beastmaster, the risk would be high and the reward might not be worth it. Ken asked why Hector initially agreed to this job. Hector replied that someone had problems, and such jobs are usually avoided. He added that this job was not personally a burden to him. Kenta agreed with him. The elder from the guild escorted Kenta and Hector, saying he was counting on them. Can't he think for himself? that this would be his first official assignment from the guild, and he was wondering what they would have to face during the work. Hector remembered the new saddle on the familiar Kent and noticed that he seemed not to object. Kenta replied that he had inquired at the leather workshop on Remisnikiv Street. Hector was shocked and said that the man was known for his capriciousness and was surprised that Kenta even approached him. Kenta explained that the old man seemed pleasant to him. Hector explained that the old man was a first-class craftsman, but had a reputation for refusing customer orders while simultaneously selling his existing stock, and there were rumors that he would retire soon. Perhaps Kentak made a good decision, can recall the words of the old man. Finally, they reached the historical village, where the head of the village, Brian, greeted them and thanked them for coming. Kent also introduced his familiars, and then Brian led them to the place, and explained that these creatures were taking the best crops just before the harvest, and the likely culprit was someone who knew horses well. When Kent examined the tracks, they seemed to him to be horse tracks, but he did not understand why they were so different from human tracks and from wild horse tracks. Shamble feels something strange. He suggested that it could have been the work of a centaur, but quickly dismissed the idea. Hector approached Kent and asked if the centaur was to blame, and Kent replied that it was possible. He believed that human-horse hybrids could really exist. Sham would agree, and add that they usually lived on remote mountain peaks and rarely came down to the valleys. Kent asked Hector if the creature they were talking about was a real centaur, and wondered what would happen next. Hector replied that it was a mythical creature from the race of phantoms that no one had ever seen. He said that if it were caught and brought to the capital, it would be a great event. Kent pondered the idea of hunting it. Franz noted that Kent was joking and pointed out that no human could fight a centaur. He added that even if the king gathered an elite squad, they would still be defeated by its strength. Everyone felt something strange in the distance. Sham would ask if everyone could feel it, and Kent agreed. I am beginning to understand what this might be. Sham will tell Kenti to clear the area. Kenta asked the others to leave him alone for a while. Hector noted that Kenta's decision resembles the decision of a man from the forest. Friends, noticing that they were in Kenti's hands, asked him to take it and return to the village. Ken will ask them to tell the villagers to stay in their houses and assure them that he will return when it is safe. After the place was cleaned up, Kenta called the centaur to show himself. When the centaur did not appear, Kenta thought that he probably did not understand. Then Sham will release the recognition of the second year of the first stage and also the second oral language of the first stage. He was told to try to speak. Kenta called the centaur again and assured him that he was not hurt. The centaur appeared and asked how he found out about it. Kenta was glad to see the centaur in his car and asked why it was so far from its native land. The centaur began to cry and stagger upon noticing this. He turned to Kenta and scolded him for making the centaur cry. Kenta, embarrassed, asked what he had done wrong, then apologized to the centaur and asked if he wanted something to eat. The centaur is closed like a mouth. When Kenta offered something to eat, the centaur asked if it was fruit, and Kenta himself was not entirely sure. Placed the fruit in the center. Thanking Kenta, the youngest of the Chirons, Barry Henel Curios introduced himself and asked who Kenta was. The centaur, speaking through a cover, noted that Kentak did not seem like an ordinary person, and Kentak suspected it was because of magic. Shemgal informed the centaur that now he would be able to see him clearly. The centaur was shocked to see Samuel, the god creator of their world, and asked why he was here and why he looked so cute. Sham will ask what happened to the centaur. The centaur explained that when the Earth's power weakened, their people began to decline. Some started to shrink and could not move like him. Shame will ask if someone disappeared. The centaur shook his head and explained that it was only a matter of time because he was very large, so he left his village himself to reduce the number of mouths to feed. Then Samuel explained that the centaur was overexerting himself, and they all needed the strongest mana to survive. The centaur explained that during his journey people found him and put him in a cage to take him to the royal capital. But he found a way and escaped. In the process, he lost a huge amount of mana and barely reached the village on the brink of death. Kenta, now understanding, said that this was why the centaur looked like that. The centaur agreed and thanked Kenta for the fruit that gave him health and helped him survive. Kenta thought aloud whether the form of the centaurus seemed strange. The centaur confirmed that he was more than 300 years old. Shame will explain that when people had it hard, centaurs burned their own mana to survive. Otherwise, they shrank and eventually disappeared. Kenta was shocked by this discovery. He expressed concern, not knowing if the centaur would ever recover, and the centaur replied that with enough mana, he would return to his usual state. Shane added that they might need more mana for at least a day of recovery, and the more the centaur ate, the faster he will recover. Kenta asked Sakura to show how many fruits they had, and Sakura opened his storage and showed the fruits. Kenta then ordered the centaur to eat everything. As Centaur ate, he asked Kenta how he ended up with Samuel. Shamimul introduced Kenta as the savior of the world. The centaur was shocked by what he heard. Shem will explain that Kenta was from another world, and that it was Shem who reincarnated him into this world. The centaur bowed and said that if it were not for Kenta, he would have disappeared. He thanked Kenta for saving their world. Kenta replied that he did nothing. The only thing Samuel asked was to help the centaur return home. Kenta agreed and then spoke to Nina, that the road seemed long. The centaur calmed him and told him not to worry. Kenta asked if his hunger was satisfied. The centaur thanked him and confirmed that it was. Kenta then asked the centaur if he knew where his home was, and the centaur replied that he did, thinking about how sincere, serious, and kind Kenta seemed. Kent explained that he owed Samuel a favor, and that he was already on the road. The centaur asked if everything was all right, and Kent shook his hand upon learning that his name was Barry. When Ken later returned to the village, Brian asked how everything went and if he was okay. Ken replied that they returned safely. Then Brian asked if that creature was really a centaur, but Ken denied it and said it was another animal, and they settled everything. Kent then asked if Brian could cover the damages and the rest of the fruit trees, and if 50 gold coins would be enough for that. Ryan said that should be enough to cover the expenses, so they should send others what they can. The next day they would prepare for the harvest and shipment, so Brian suggested everyone stay overnight to prepare. Ken asked Hector if everything was all right. Hector replied that he would report to the guild the next day. Then Kent asked Brian where to buy tea. Brian replied that the tea leaves come from the village of Leaworth, one of those villages, and he agreed to take Ken there. When Ken went to pitch a tent outside, Hector apologized for occupying the guest room, and Ken replied that he preferred being with them and that the tent was cozy too. Hector said that having such a place for storage was very convenient, and that he also wanted one, and Kent explained that it made traveling much more comfortable. In the text, there was a hidden picture of apple juice and bread with jam, which they shared. France told Kenty that they needed to report to the guild, and Kenta agreed. When he told everything, France and Hector were shocked by what they heard. Kenta aloud wondered whether to inform the guild about it. France replied that it was a complicated situation, but given the circumstances, they would keep it a secret. It was better to tell them everything, because this whole situation was difficult for them. The next day, when they arrived at the rest of the Adventure Guild, they told the guild everything, and its members were stunned when they heard it. Kenta then asked Barry to step outside, and when Barry appeared, the men were moved to see a real centaur. One of them said he never thought he would live to see a centaur. An elderly man thanked Kento with a handshake. Barry wondered if the trip was worth it, seeing how happy he was. 2 more approached Barry, interested and eager to shake his hand. Barry kindly said they could ask anything. One of the women then asked for his autograph. Kent told them that the village elder Brian was waiting, so he would step out briefly and ask them to look after Barry. Then he approached Brian and suggested they head to Leaworth village. Hector added that they would leave soon and told Kenta to call them if anything happened. When Kenta was with Max, Brian asked where Nini was, and Kenta replied that she had gone hunting and would return soon. Brian remarked on how impressive Kenta's familiars were, and asked where he had met them. Kenta answered, recalling Shadowcut Mountain. Ryan was surprised and said that Kenta was the first person he knew from that place and asked how it was there. Ken replied that there was not much to say about it. After that, Brian apologized and reported that they had already reached the village of Leaworth. They went to buy supplies, and a woman thanked Kenta for protecting the garden. She said they had excellent green and black tea and offered him to choose his favorite. Kenta replied that he had already received a reward, so he would buy a lot. The woman thanked him for the purchase, and remember that the third village is Hubble. Tenny had a great selection of wooden carved products, baskets, and dishes. Kenta initially thought the chief was joking with him, but then said he would look around and buy everything. Kenta and Brian arrived at the village of Albel and began examining various items. Kenta said he had seen some of them before and bought them from that family. And then the man asked if he was the one who bought a lot from the Lorry family, and thanked him for supporting them so well. At that moment, Nay was with Kenta, and Max was hunting. Suddenly, a cat appeared and looked at Nini, and noting her greatness, they wondered what it could be. Kenta was stunned that the cat spoke human language. When the cat said to them hello, the man drove him away, saying there was no food for him. Kenta was surprised whether the cat really spoke. He kept buying a few things while the cat walked. Sham will say that the situation seems strange. Kenta agreed and noted that the cat did not look ordinary. Shameless said that the cat had no place there. Kenta addressed the cat and asked if the cat could speak. The cat replied that it did not understand what he was talking about. Kenta doubted whether it was his imagination, but the cat confirmed that it was just imagination. Kent insisted that it spoke. The interested cat asked if he would be able to understand her. Shamuel then realized that it was Kate Sit, a mythical creature. Kenta was surprised and asked if it was similar to a centaur, and Shamuel confirmed. and explained that mythical creatures usually did not appear in human cities, but something began to change. Kenta asked if the cat lived in the village, but the cat denied it. Then Kenta inquired if the cat had enough food. The cat replied that sometimes it was so, but the village was poor, so she would not force them to feed her. Shemville, sounding emotional, called Kenta, who understood that Shamil wanted him to take care of the cat. Ken will answer that he will not say no, so he will help. He addressed the cat and asked if she wanted to join them, at least to eat. She introduced herself as Talon and warmly greeted them. Max returned from hunting. Talon was shocked by his appearance, and Ken noted that their group was growing. Shamil believed that Kentis's presence stabilized the flow of magic, but sudden changes had a significant impact, so they needed to be closely monitored. When they returned to Restum, a small child rushed to Nina and Max. Ken recognized them as members of the Lori family. He said he had just arrived from the village of Albal on behalf of the guild, and someone asked if it was related to the problem in the garden, and if it had already been resolved. When Ken confirmed this, they were glad to hear the news. Noticing the boy eating bread, Ken asked if he liked the bread, and the boy replied that it was very sweet and tasty. But it sells out quickly. When the child and his mother left, he thought about how well the new products were selling, and that Nolan's bread had become a hit. Later, Kenta made a sandwich with egg, and was glad to have found mayonnaise to add to it. When he was climbing the stairs to the building where he lived, the guildmaster called him. They thanked him for today's work. The guildmaster said that the guild would buy fruits in the village to support Barry, and that the fruits were stored in the warehouse where Barry was waiting. Kenta went to meet Barry. Commenting on how much she had grown, Barry replied that it was all thanks to Kenta. Ken will ask Sakura to gather everything they can. When he opened the map and looked for where Barry's hometown was located, Barry himself explained that it was deep in the mountains and had an entrance that was easy to find. There was no rush, so he asked Kenta to prioritize the journey, and now that he had set out, he himself also wanted to enjoy the trip. Kenta thought to continue according to the original plan, and Sham would agree with this. Ken said that first they would go to Basin to forge his sword, and then they would go to Barry. He noted that the road from the eastern capital to Basin seemed shorter. However, Shane pointed out that the east was dangerous and suggested instead to take the western route. Kenta agreed. They said they would pass through Chester, cross 2 rivers, then pass through Louverf, Vols, and finally reach Basin. He told Barry that the journey would be long, but it was worth enjoying the towns along the way. Barry agreed. Kenta then asked Talon what she usually eats. She replied that she eats everything, including meat, fish, eggs, and vegetables. Kenta understood that it was the same as a normal diet, so he gave her some chicken. Talon remarked that it looked tasty. Barry was thoughtful when Kate's seat arrived and then greeted Talon. Ken finished eating and reminded everyone to stock up before leaving Restum. Then he went to sleep, thinking about the journey ahead of them. Everyone came to the area with hard brown stones. Kenta said that it was in demand, so let's start hunting. Nini replied that she would do her best. Talon nodded in agreement. Kenta was shocked when he saw that Talon could change size. Shembel explained that mythical beasts can change their size, and crystal monsters have a similar trait. But beasts used a slightly different technique in the art, and Kenta pondered that art and magic. He asks if they call him that there. He really wanted to try it himself, but Sham will answer that Kenta will not start trying this art yet. Kenta asked if Shamiel had used it. Sham will answer that he could use it wisely, but will advise not to overdo it. Kenta is still excited and agreed. Shamu then showed him 3 cards and asked him to choose one. After Kenta chose a card, Shane ordered him to stretch both hands in front of him, palms outward. Kenta followed his instruction. Mo placed his pawns over Kentis, ordered him to obtain Ace Affinity, freeze on command, then record. Shami was ordered to try, and when he spoke those words, and a beautiful stone appeared in his hand, and it was an intoxicating feeling. Shamiel then asked him to say shatter. When his relative said the word, the stone crumbled into small pieces. Samuel told him to save Malta, and the stone began to melt in Kentis's hands. Kent talks about it and thanks Samuel. Shame will explain that the ice was hard and could cause damage if thrown. He showed this by saying stone, ice, and threw the icy stone at the nearest monster, where it caused damage upon impact. Sham will ask him to perform the task carefully. Ken suggested to start and try to catch as many as possible. Then he created ice stones, and together with his assistants began hunting monsters to collect gems. The familiars urged him on because they were late. He said his heart was tired but pulled out his hammer again, and they continued to search for precious stones. He also said that that day he would get the potion, so they should act to the fullest. After some time of hunting, they went to the shop of the man who made collars for his familiars. As soon as the man saw him, he asked why he had come. Kent explained that he wanted a collar for the cat. The man understood that Kent had been hunting again, and soon the adventurers would write to help. He was grateful to Kent for his efforts. Kent asked Talon to choose the color she liked. Then he told the man that he was heading to Bazin to forge a sword from the horn. The man was shocked when he heard about the horn and asked Ken to show it. When Kent showed it, the man said it was the horn of a Hercules beetle. Ken has to ask if it is really valuable. The man said that he was from Bazin and had a shop on Main Street with a good reputation. But misfortunes piled up and he got into debt. A friend gave him a rare horn of a Hercules beetle, but that night it was stolen. Eventually the man could not pay his debts and lost both the shop and the house. If he had stopped the theft, maybe he wouldn't have lost everything, but instead he tried to pay off the debt by seizing his friend's property. He felt foolish for not daring to meet with his friend, although in Bazini his friend simply forgave him. Then the man thanked Kenti for the peace that the horn gave. Ken will answer and tell him to forget about it. Finally, the man introduced himself as Fort and said that his friend's name was Fiant. He wished Ken a safe journey. Kent replied that he was glad to have made friends with Fort, and then shook his hand. Then Kent left and Fort returned to work. Shamu reminded himself that he was the creator god, called to form, protect, and care for the multiverse. The world he had recently created was rich in water and nature, where different forms of life coexisted in harmony. It was a precious creation, but the weakening of the energy lines caused destruction. Although he did everything possible, nothing succeeded. As a last resort, he had to summon a stable source from other worlds. But he did not manage to find anyone, and the collapse continued to advance, with less and less time remaining. He finally summoned Kenta, the one who can save the world. When Kent appeared, it seemed the air was filled with a warm soul and brought a feeling of calm. Samuel felt a great debt to Kentak and wanted to repay him with help. His familiars woke up Kenta. He greeted each of them in turn. He noticed how much Barry had grown, and Barry thanked him for his care. After he washed up, Ken must ask his familiars to do the same. They had a lot of fun with it. Then Kenta prepared breakfast. He said he would fry vegetables in olive oil that he had recently found. He prepared panko for tonkatsu. After trying it, he was surprised at how tasty it was, and thought that this variety might be lighter than you expected. He also fried chicken, and it turned out just as well. Secure saved everything while it was still hot. She can be thanked for that. Then he asked Shamal if he wanted something to eat. Shamal refused. Instead, he asked if they were going hunting that day. Kenta did not know what to do because he also needed to prepare for the trip. Sheem will explain that there were many new gem monsters for hunting, such as large brown rats, brown killer mantises, and brown grasshoppers, which were especially difficult to deal with. Kenta became interested in them, and noted that they could gather in large numbers. He decided that that day they would hunt, the next day prepare for the trip, and the day after set off. Barry said he would be at the guild. Kenta, ready with his familiars, called and suggested setting out for the hunt. They reached the destination, where Kent saw a large number of mantises, which looked quite threatening. Shemble said that if these were just provocations, Kenta would handle it, so it was better for them to stay aside for now. The group began fighting the mantises and Kenta to count how many there were. Suddenly behind him, the Nante variant disappeared. Nini hurried to protect Kenta, but he quickly used his sword and cut it down. Having done this, he found a precious stone, and what seemed to be a hardened material, or perhaps something solid, was undoubtedly beautiful. Max and Nini were surprised to see that he so easily defeated the monster. Shimo noticed how much Kenta had improved. Max and Nini expressed admiration for Kenta, impressed that he handled the variant on his own. Shane Mallon said that after this victory the brown grasshoppers would no longer be a problem, and he insisted on releasing Sku so they could continue their journey. They continued on their way. Ken said that Shem would confirm the location of the grasshoppers, but it was already late, and you doubted whether they were on the right path, and Max agreed. And just then Shemwell suddenly appeared, saying that an emergency had occurred and they needed to run faster. Max and Nini immediately started running. Kenta was left wondering what had happened. Sham explained that a crazy number of monsters had appeared and the situation was very serious. Kenta asked if Shamul knew about the upcoming mass outbreak, and Shamul replied that the cases turned out to be much more than expected, and the monsters would destroy plants and animals, causing serious harm to people. Kenta needed to assess the situation, but Shamil insisted he would handle it himself. So Kenton inquired if they could help in any way. Sham said that it was impossible. Kenta then asked if there was anything else he could help with. Shame will remain, even if he borrows Kenta's body, explaining that with the help of the device it is easier for him to fight. Kenta hesitated, was not sure if Samuel could really enter his body, but realizing that it was urgent, he allowed Shamil to use him. Samuel, touched by Kenta's willingness to help, was moved and said that Kenta never refused anything. Kenta smiled and replied that it was because he was a good guy. Sheem promised that he would make sure Kenta stayed alive, then stepped away from Max and Nini, telling them to stay here should be fine. He inhabited Kenta's body, and Kenta was surprised to see that his body was moving on its own. The voice of Shamgol echoed in his head, and Kentak wondered if the locusts still posed a threat. Shamgol explained that the energy lines had stabilized, but their energy had explosively increased in quantity, and when the locusts flew in swarms, they mutated and became even more ferocious. A lot of water and vegetation only worsened the situation. Shamu had planned to deal with this earlier, but reproduction was happening so fast that he never expected this. He knew it was very dangerous, and Kenta would also be scared, so he asked Kenta to close his eyes. Kenta hesitated and asked if he should watch. Sham agreed, and Kent later said that he tried to protect this place. Even if he is a coward, he can also show courage, so at least let him share the burden of this responsibility. Shamil thanked him. Then he said that we should witness this together, and when it is all over, do not fear him. Ken asked if it was a bit late, and Shameless smiled and asked him to promise. Add this too, we will celebrate when they return. Shem nodded and said that because of his position he avoided getting close, but for some time he thought the food looked delicious. Ken smiled and replied that he would quickly make something. So let's quickly deal with this. At that moment they saw a huge swarm of locusts approaching. They were very large and there were so many of them. Ken will say that they are so big and there are so many of them. Shembel pushes them all back with his strength, his magic creating a barrier between them and the swarm. Kent and Marvel are in place. Realizing that the swarm devours even animals, Shembel moves quickly and easily cuts through them. His blade was chopping creatures as he fought. Shamalt said he was not finished yet, and with a light wrist movement, he burned the rest of the locusts with fire. Kent was shocked by Shanel's power, but Shamul did not stop and launched a meteor attack to further reduce their numbers. Kent suggested that if they kept shooting like this, it would be easier, but Sham shook his head and said they couldn't just keep shooting at everyone because the land where the meteors fall would be destroyed, and it would take a very long time to recover, so it shouldn't be resorted to unless absolutely necessary. Instead, Shem will continue to cut through the swarm with his sword. Flames danced along the blade as it sliced through the air. Kent was captivated by the flames, and Shem apologized, worried that the sword might be damaged. An aggressive hopper makes a dash towards Chanul. He hit him on the hand and he felt pain. Shem will immediately apologize for the harm caused to Kenta's body, using his strength to heal the wound. Kenta, watching the fight unfold, wondered if there were finally fewer grasshoppers. Shembel slid through the air again, using his signal rockets to scorch the remaining creatures, then cutting them down again. He fought tirelessly, his clothes becoming tattered as the fight continued. Eventually, Sham will fall to the ground, exhausted from the long struggle. Kenta thinks about the past and recalls the tragic car accident that took his parents' lives when he was a teenager. Later, his uncle took him in, and it was thanks to his legacy that Kenta was able to pay for his education. He moved to a village, found a job, and eventually got back on his feet. He dealt daily with pack caravans and worked tirelessly. His routine was simple. In the morning, he attended meetings, and in the afternoon, he met with clients, and returned home to sleep. One night, when he was lying in bed, Nini came to him. The next morning, Kento woke up and realized it was time to get up, but there was no signal. He decided to sleep a little longer. When he finally woke up, he found himself seriously wounded, and quickly realized it was only a dream. It was then that he heard familiar voices calling him. Everyone was very happy that he had finally returned. When Kenta regained consciousness, he remembered the fight with a swarm of locusts that caused him severe injuries, and Shanival gave him a drink, which was sweet, and cannot drink at all. Soon he realized that he could speak again, and thanked them for their help. They noticed that Max and Nini were both emotional. He apologized to them. Sham will encourage him to drink more so that he gains strength and can move. You can thank them once again. Then Samuel approached Kenta, and gently told him that he was broken. Kenta finally managed to move his hand, and when he touched Samuel, he noticed how soft his tail was. Shamuel warned him that this was a sensitive spot and advised not to overdo it. Later, Shamuel sincerely thanked Kenta for saving him twice. Kent modestly replied that he did nothing, only shouted. Shamuel noted that it was very noisy. Kenta then wondered how long he had already been lying there. Samuel explained that about 1.5 days had passed. Kenta was shocked by this fact. Shamil continued and said that he preserved the wasteland in the subspace and replaced it with a meadow. Kenta was surprised and doubted that it was really the same place because it looked incredible. Shamgal assured him that the wasteland would gradually recover. Kenta agreed and thanked Samuel for everything he had done. Sheem expressed with relief that Kenta was safe. While Max and Nini were licking him, Kent apologized for bothering them and sincerely thanked them. He said that they needed to return so he could rest, because Barry and the guild were waiting for them. Samuel gave Ken new clothes and armor, as well as his sword. Kent asked Sakura to help him wash up, and then he changed into new clothes. Shembel noted that the armor had become stronger, and Kent noticed that the clothes had changed a little, and now he could hold his sword with both hands. Then he carefully examined his sword and saw that it was still broken. Sheem will explain that jums from Locust were with them, and there were many variants. Kenta asked how many there were. Shemi will say that Aqua had 49 million and Sakura had 57 million. A tenth of them are variants. Kenta was shocked and asked if transporting such a quantity of valuables would not cause chaos. And Shamu reassured him and said that the valuables were safe, and explained that when monsters multiply like locusts, it can cause problems. Kenta agreed that keeping them for now was not a problem, suggested hiding them, and Shamuel then asked if he was not going to exchange them. Ken will answer that the guild will fall apart if they do that, and that it is time to return because he is very hungry. He called Max and Nini and asked if the food was ready. They apologized for forgetting about it, and Kent told them to go and buy food. He would wait for them, while his familiars want to prepare the food. Ken carried a table and a chair out of Sakura, together with a set of spears, and a sandwich made from bread baked in a cauldron. He began to eat, starting with the fact that it was so good. Shen will ask if it was really that good. Kenton nodded and offered Shenmul some. He said he promised to treat Shamil, and Shamil seemed to want fried chicken, and Kent joked as if Samuel really wanted it. Shem, who apologized to Kenta, explained that he never wanted to misunderstand him, and he wanted Kenta to live happily. Kenta thought, realizing that Shamu cared about such things. Then he said aloud that he used to be afraid of school assignments, and even getting up in the morning was a burden. But now he was having so much fun. Kenta knew that in his previous life he was also well, but he did not want to return there. Shamil told him that it was a wish of the soul if Kent ever wished for it. Ken replied that his life now was wonderful, and he was glad that Samuel had brought him here. To live a second life to the fullest, surrounded by beloved pets, done and feeling incredible happiness. Then he offered the Chingles some of his food. Shim accepted it gratefully and took a bite. Ken has to ask if it was good. Samuel nodded and agreed, confirming that it was. Turning to the guild, Kenta approached the old man and asked how many gems he needed. The old man replied that he would take as many as Kenta could bring. Kenta said that the guild had driven Michael to bankruptcy, then asked if they would also buy that plot, and the old man confirmed that they would. Kenta asked if 10 standard options along with gems from the brown grasshopper would be suitable. After the conversation, the old man asked if there were any more dangers, and it could be answered that at least they had exterminated the overly numerous locusts. The old man noted that this could turn into a war of attrition with many casualties. He said that there had been many earthquakes everywhere, but fortunately no damage occurred, and he was grateful for that and glad that Kenta was safe. The old man also expressed hope to meet other colleagues someday, as it seemed like a wonderful experience. Then the old man asked how many gems Kenta had. Kenta replied that it was a secret. He doubted that they could trust him so easily, and felt that he was saying something strange. The old man assured him that he had not lied before, and more importantly, he asked if Kenta really intended to lead this place. Kenta agreed and explained that his main goal was to travel the world. The old man thought about how his father forced him to stay in such a remote place, then asked if Kenta could request additional guild registration in any city they would go to, and Kenta was interested in what that meant. The old man said that the city on the maps has a guild, and he intends to register there as before, and also suggested merging the guilds so they could exchange gems besides requests, help residents, and link his name and activities between guilds for mutual support. There were many discounts on accommodation. Kenta understood this and said he wanted to help the city and the guild, so he decided to take advantage of this opportunity. When Kent went outside, Barry, grateful for his hard work, said he would have joined Kenta earlier if he could. Kenta apologized for leaving him waiting for several days. Barry replied that he stayed in the guild where Shem should have reported to him first. When Kenta asked Shamuel how everything went, Shamuel mysteriously replied that it was a secret. Kenta noted that the world is full of secrets. The next day, Kenta gathered additional supplies: bread, butter, sugar, freshly brewed coffee, chicken and vegetable sandwiches, fruits for Barry, and chicken for Talon. After exchanging jewels, he was ready to set off. The old man approached him. He muttered that it was time to say goodbye. He extended his fist to Kenta, wishing him luck and strong bonds. Kenta responded with a fist bump. Kenta, saying goodbye, told Barry to take care and headed to Chester. In Reston, there were many good people, and he had a good time there. Now he wondered which city and which people awaited him. On the way, he was suddenly chased by a crowd of salamanders, and wondered how he went from resting by the stream to being pursued. Sham will explain that it was a powerful breath of dark brown giant salamanders. Just then Max came and asked Ken to sit on him. Shamil ordered Kenti to attack the weak spot of the salamander with ice during the escape. Kenta agreed, but an elemental attack appeared from the front. He did not manage to defend himself in time, and the attack was suddenly cut off. Turns into a large precious stone. The man asked Kenti if he was all right. Ken thanked him for the help. Shamuel recognized the man as Hastur, and Hastur said aloud that he doubted if this was really Shamuel, and what had happened to make him so kind. Kenta wondered whether Hastur was acquainted with Shamuel. and then Shamuel introduced Kenta as the savior of that world. He realized that Kenta was from another world and thanked him. Introducing themselves in turn, Kenta could not help but think that Hastur was a god. Shameless suggested that Hastur might be the embodiment of the god of war, and Kenta pondered that a god could take human form. Shamuel explained that when he created that world, friends helped him, and Hastur was one of the guardians. Kenta thought that sounded reassuring, and then asked why they could not ask the brown pauper for help, and Shane will say that he did not respond. Then Heshtre asked if the two of them had exterminated the grasshoppers. Shamil said that it was a difficult period. Hashtra noted that Shamil also ignored his activities when there were omens. Shamil explained that he was busy then. Then Sham will say that Hasfar was strong, and since he, like Kenta, was human, he could quite possibly become a vessel. Hasher then made a huge precious stone disappear. This shocked Kenta. Jamie will explain that Gasfer also used it. Kenta thought that it might be a storage device and that Hastur equipped it with standard gear, and said that he relies on Aqua and Sakura for similar purposes. He glanced at Kentis's familiars and remarked that they were impressive, adding that he even had a cat shy and a centaur. Hasfer was now waving his hands over Max, Nina, and Kent, showing that those two came with him. Gaster asked if Kenta was not training magical creatures there. Although Kenta was still a novice, he said he shouldn't have encountered this so quickly, and added that there are many strong creatures on the Shadow Rift Mountain, so he is afraid to get closer. Hasfer asked if Kenta didn't know about this, then told Samuel to think ahead and warned that rash actions could make them careless. Sham will answer that it was not easy, but he carefully thought out the plan and gradually taught them because it was still early. Kenta, grateful to Shamuel, said he understood what carelessness was. Hester laughed, and Shamuel was a little upset and wondered what he had done to Kent. Then Gaster asked where they were heading next, and Ken replied that they were heading to Bison, but now they were in Chester. Hasfer suggested that since Kenta did not know that world, let Hasfer accompany him there and protect him, and he promised to share everything he knew. Kenta, delighted, said he would very much like to go, and it was reassuring to know that Hasfer's support was there. Shenwul Vondry from Hasfer was still the good guy he remembered. They noticed that Kenta was also getting stronger, and Kenta replied that he would rely on everyone he could because they would not survive alone. Hasfer then suggested setting out to the mountains of the Shadow Rift, was shocked and could not ask why. Gasfer explained that Kenta would ride his familiar, and since Gasfer himself also wanted a mount, there were many in the Forest Sea, and it was better to see for themselves what the mountains cut by shadows were really like. Kentest replied fearfully that he did not want to get closer. Gasfer insisted that it was a great opportunity and that they could meet the people of the Forest Sea. Kentest continued to protest. Fear was on his face, and Gasfer laughed. As they went further, night began to fall, and it had to be said that it took about 2 days to reach the mountain, so they should spend the night. Kenta took out a tent and remarked that he thought it would be fun to sleep in a tent with his companions, then took out a table and chairs, said he would prepare food, and asked if they ate human food. Hashtag said he sighed with relief because most of the food Kenta carried was portable, and Schengel added that Kenta's food was always tasty. Kenta decided to give me something and make it luxurious. He lightly tapped the spices and sprinkled them on the meat before putting it on the fire, thinking that a higher temperature would be better for this. Hashtag asked him to use a gemstone for the fire. Kenta wondered what he meant by using a stone to explain that the type of stone could change the intensity of the fire. Kenta said he tossed smaller precious stones. Hasfer handed him a crystal and told him to use it, explaining that the crystal was taken from a brown stone frog, which has powerful fire energy and lasts a long time. And Kenta noted that the crystal did not fit the opening. Hasfer took out a knife for the gem and asked Kent to place the stone inside. He explained that the cutter would break it into 8 small pieces, which they need to cover and press down. When the precious stone was split into smaller pieces, it could be noticed that it split nicely. He chose one of the pieces to put into the pit as fuel and said that it would give off a great heat. As noted, usually people ask the guild or use special tools to split stones, but it is useful to have a cutter on hand. Kent sighed with relief aside. Then he decided to prepare bread soup. Hasfer said that he directly stored the cooked food. Kent poured sauce made from meat fat over the bread and steak. As Hasfer ate, he said it was tasty. When told that Kent could become a cook, he modestly replied that it was a bit of an exaggeration. Ken has to offer Shamil some food. When Samuel ate, he said it was very tasty and that he liked it more and more. After this, they continued their journey and reminded Kenta not to forget about the monsters made of precious stones. He noticed that in the forest they saw different colors. Kenta denied this, but he still asked Shamul how unlocked Kenta's appraisal skill was, and Shamul replied that it was at the 1st level. Hashtag explained that people usually could see up to the 2nd level. Samuel then unlocked the 2nd level of Kenta's appraisal skill, and Kenta was able to see different colors. He wondered if it was a bird. It should be clarified that it was black mosquito water, which appeared only at night. He said it was clumsy in flight, so they should wait until it falls. At the moment they were fighting, claws attacked them, and Hastur warned Kenta that he would be put to sleep by poison. He explained that the poison would make him sleep for 10 days, and that this creature is called a nightmare, an enemy of travelers which becomes prey for beasts. After they dealt with the threat, it started to rain. It should be noted that on rainy days a monster made of precious stones appeared. They approached the pond and asked for an explanation. They were told that it usually smells but becomes murky during rain. Suddenly a fish jumped out of the water. They caught a fish and identified it as a brown killer fish, explaining that such fish can be caught immediately. Kenta also started fishing, noting that it was bait fishing, and it looks very fun. He was glad that he could fish there as much as he wanted. When the rain stopped, Hastur said they needed to return to the sand and warned Kenta that if they didn't return, the fish would fall into a coma. Kenta was shocked and said it had already frozen. The one who explained that the sandy area was actually bottomless warned Kenta not to cross it recklessly, because if his feet got stuck, he wouldn't be able to move. If it rained again, he would drown and die. Hearing this, he became even more worried. Hasa used a small stone to show how quickly the ground could give way. He advised Kenta to be careful near the sandy areas by the pond and reminded him to always remember this during adventures. After that, Hastur suggested heading to the Shadowcat Mountains. Kenta was still afraid, said he didn't want to go there and just wanted to spend calm, fun days. Shamil called him stubborn. As they walked through the forest, Kenta noticed the vast sea of trees and remarked that the plants here were completely different from those outside the forest. Hastur began preparing a rope to catch the monster and ordered Kenta to put the meat and set a trap for the dog. Then they hid behind bushes and started waiting, soon about how to approach the meat. And he has to pull the rope again to catch it by the legs. He quickly jumped on the creature and told Kenta to hit it on the nose with the sheaths of his weapon. Then he hit the hounds on the nose as ordered. After he touched the creature's body and asked if it could join their group. The dog was successfully tamed. Kent turned to Shamu and asked if the familiar could be transferred to another person. And Shamu replied that with the owner's consent, Deko could arrange an exchange. Ken asked about the name of the hound, and decided to name him Sirius. Ken, calling Sirius and pointing to Hastur, explained that Hastur is now his owner. Hastur introduced himself and greeted the newly tamed hound. Sirius replied that he was glad to meet him. Sham added that Sirius was a rare variant, to which Kenta noted that it was really very cool. Hastur thanked Kenta for his help. When they moved on, Kenta said that Sirius would need a saddle. Hastur reported that nearby there was a monster with gemstones. Ken wondered if he meant a caterpillar, but quickly denied it. As they walked further, they noticed that the tree was moving. Hastur explained that it was a turtle tree, that is, a turtle with a tree on its back. Kenta was shocked when he realized that the ground beneath them was the turtle's shell. Hastur explained that in the sea of trees they are easy prey, and the tactic is to cut off the top where nutrients are stored. Technically it was not a tree but a parasite. That is why it could be cut down so easily. Then he cut down one and got a precious stone. They continued cutting. Suddenly a whip-like tendril broke free and grabbed Kenta by the leg. He wondered where it had come from, and it was clear that it was dangerous. He drew his knife. Although he tried to cut the mustache, he was eventually released. His familiars hurried to help. Kenti needs to join him quickly because he fears for his life. He realized that the whip came from the tree and assumed it might be some kind of species. He cut the mustache and found another gem. He noticed that Kenti was lucky because the tree did not try to eat him, and Kenta replied that he did not think the tree could eat him. It is necessary to respond that it was not just a tree, but rather resembled a caterpillar bite. Then he pointed to the black deadly worm on the tree, and explained that the turtle trees survived thanks to these creatures. Kenta was fascinated by parasitism and how the tree served as bait. He pondered the connection between the creatures and the trees, and then Hastur suggested Kenta take a piece of the large gem as a reward for surviving. Hastur said that now they would collect a few more gems. Kenta asked Aqua and Sakura to help them, and then addressed Hastur. He asked how he managed the stones and wondered if Hastur could not use them all, or wanted to keep some. Of refusal, he said he has enough, but then advised Kenta to always collect all the gems, and leave them near the ley lines so they could be revived. Kenta guessed that Shamil probably also collects grasshopper crystals. Hastur warned Kenta not to throw stones carelessly and advised either to use them or sell them. Just then, Aqua and Sakura returned and said they had finished collecting. Ken thanked them for their help. Hashtri said that using slimes is very convenient. Kenta added that slimes can help cleanse their bodies. Nini caught a slime and brought it. Kenta obtained it and decided to give it to Hastur. Shamuel even endowed the slime with the ability to store and cleanse. It was named Fog and was treated warmly. Then they continued on their way. Kenta noticed that the path was now widening, and the guests realized they were approaching the village of tree people. How Ken looks at the head. He noticed that it seemed calm here. Hastur met an old man on the path, and after they greeted each other, they noticed that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Kenta, interested in the new guest, noticed that the old man had dog ears, and next to him sat a girl with cat ears. This made him realize that they had arrived in the village of beastmen. The old man greeted Kenta and gave his name. The old man said that he knew about the crisis in the world and had despaired. The old man wanted to thank Kenta for saving their world and apologized. Kenta did not understand why the old man was apologizing. Sheem explained that even Kenta's soul was used to help save the world, and they understood everything that had happened. Kenta reassured them, saying that it was already in the past. He did not fully understand what was happening, so they did not need to worry. He also said that he had traveled the world and got to know different places. The old man led them to a place where Kenta and his companions could stay. When Kenta entered the room, he was surprised at how spacious it was. When he looked around, he noted that everything is very impressive and doubted whether it was all handmade, because it is hard to believe that someone could weave such a wide fabric. Then a girl with cat ears appeared and asked if Kenta had come among the beasts. Is clearly impressed. Kenta told about Shamuel's gifts and how Hastur helped with the dog, adding that he is currently studying with them. The girl said she was amazed that he is friends with Shamuel and was delighted. He was asked if he was also a sage. Kenta shook his head and replied that he is only a beast tamer. The girl introduced herself as Lute, and Kent greeted her with a smile, shaking his head in acknowledgement. He then told Hastur to use the bed, but Hastur insisted that Kenta take the bed, and Kenta laughed and said that the fluffiest friends get the best places. Lute was still impressed and said that it was incredible, and asked if she could touch the companions. Kenta, smiling, gave consent. An old man approached and told them that night would soon come. Since it was dangerous until dawn, they should stay inside. He suggested waiting until morning to go out. Kenta was surprised about what was happening. Explained that it was a custom in the Sea of Trees, and it would be safer inside, so there was no need to worry. Lute expressed concern that she might be left behind closed doors, and Kenta apologized to her. Lute then asked to stay with them for the night. Kenta agreed and asked why it was important to stay inside at night. She explained that by evening the world in the Sea of Trees changed. They were people of light, and the night belonged to creatures of darkness. If they went outside, the dark creatures would engulf them. The night was dangerous and their safety could not be guaranteed, so she suggested staying inside, and Kenta said that the dark inhabitants sounded creepy. Lute nodded and said that she had never seen them herself, but the scariest of all was the Dark Devourer, a bear-like creature that dragged its victims into the darkness forever. Her words sent a chill down Kentis's spine, and she laughed at his reaction. Lute then described how black cotton clouds quietly enveloped everything from behind, making the atmosphere even more ominous. Kenta quickly responded that that was enough. Hastur reassured him that as long as they were inside, they were safe. Ken decided that it was time to eat, and they got fried chicken for dinner, fresh vegetable soup, and fruit for dessert. Lute enthusiastically asked when he had made all this, and if it was due to some cloning technology. Kenta explained that he had kept the food fresh in his storage. Then she asked Lute if she could eat it too. Lute eagerly tried the food and said it was delicious. Then he gave Talon some food so that he could eat. Lute noticed that Talon was lucky because he always eats the same dishes as Kenta. After dinner, Hastur got drinks, and while they were drinking them, Kenta said that after a long walk it was pleasant, but he forgot to buy drinks at the restaurant. Hastur smiled and replied that he filled many bottles, so they should just enjoy. Kenta said it was time to go to bed. When he entered the room, he saw that Lute was already sleeping with the nanny. He needed to lie down on the bed, and Kenta had already settled to sleep next to Nina and Max, wishing them all good night. Suddenly, Luke woke up and saw with horror that Kenta was sleeping next to her. He reassured her that everything was fine, and added that the fluffy fur of Nina and Max was the best. Luke got under the blanket to fall asleep, and Kenta wished her good night. He was falling asleep, thinking that the softness of the day was very soothing. He thought that someone passed by the window, but nothing unusual was happening. The next morning, Kenta woke up, find prey looking sick, probably because he was sleeping with his hand on her while she was also sleeping. She quickly got up and said that now she was leading, because dawn had come. Ken was supposed to ask her about dinner, but the prey only bowed in gratitude for the food and quickly ran away. Kenta watched her leave, stretched, and thought to himself that it was a good morning. Nothing strange happened during the night. Then Hastur woke up and wondered if Kenta understood something, and Kenta asked what he meant. Hastur laughed and told Samuel that he won, which stunned him. Barry then asked Quintata if he knew why Lute wanted to sleep last night. Kenta wondered if she wanted to be buried on the cliff. The Barry denied this. She said that she had fallen in love with him. Kenta was shocked by this and wondered if Lute was a boy, and Barry said that Lute was a girl, which shocked him even more. Hastur asked if Kenta did not know this. Kenta hid her face and said that it was probably a joke. Hastur explained that he planned to leave after one night, but now hesitated whether to stay longer, and Kent refused and insisted that they leave now. Hashtag asked why Kenta did not answer her question, and Kenta explained that she was just a child. It should be said that bee creatures mature quickly, and Lute was almost an adult, and if they both agreed, there would be no problems. Kenta was surprised and continued to object, saying that it was still too early for him. He did not understand love and romance, and Shamuel and Hastur laughed at his reaction. Preparing to leave, the old man told them to take some fire vodka as a keepsake. Kenta thanked him. The old man wished them a safe journey. And just then the prey came. She called Kenta and said that she would grow up quickly. So Kenta Grid has to visit her again. While waiting, he said that he was looking forward to it and hoped to remain healthy. They returned to the training zone and met for this. Ken said he wanted the same saddle for the baby and thanked him for it. Fort said he couldn't believe that beer samples were flying off the shelves, promised to adjust the strap, and asked them to come back the next day to pick it up. Kent agreed and they left. After a short rest, Sham will enjoy the drink and say that it is very tasty. Kent asked if Shamuel could really drink it, and he was explained that it was only a temporary form for Shamuel, so everything was fine. He also said that there are bars for large familiars in Lesson, and the local stew is very tasty. Kent tasted the food and said everything was delicious. Just then a man came to look at Sirius. Someone asked who that man was, and what he wanted to do with his familiar. The man called them a famous beastmaster and praised their incredible research on taming. He then asked how much he had to pay for Sirius. Kent was shocked by the offer. He decisively told him that he was not going to sell, and the man insisted that he would pay any price, and repeated his question. Hastur again refused, saying that he would not sell. The man then looked at Kentis Hawk and asked how much he was worth. Hastur, angry, asked if the man had not heard that they were not selling anything. The disappointed man said he was going home, left his business card, and asked to be contacted if they changed their mind. They wondered what he meant, but he did not listen to them. Hashtray said that refusing him was the right thing to do. Kent agreed because it was his family. When Gassler looked at the card, he said he recognized it as the work of the company Usul Trading. Ken has to ask if the company existed, and explained that it was an old trading firm known for dealing with the wealthy, and they sold slaves and familiars. Kent wondered if slavery still exists in this world. Shamil confirmed it. The buying and selling of slaves was officially banned, but some aristocrats still keep them as if nothing happened. Hastur added that Kent saw a beastman in the jungle and such creatures were the first targets of slave traders. He suggested that Lute might have disguised himself as a boy there to avoid attracting attention. Kent said he did not want to interfere. Shamnil said that although he created the world's box, he did not interfere in people's lives. But now everything is getting out of control. At first, slaves were people who had no other means and worked for the rich. But later they began to capture people to make them slaves, and they hunted them. Shamult did not want extreme hierarchies to prevail in this world. Having overcome the crisis, they could now think about the future. You warned that if anyone touched Kent or Hastur there would be no mercy, and at that moment the shameless face became enraged. With a sly expression, Shamuel continued, saying that if others made the first move, it would not be easy for them. Hastur, who looked no less threatening, agreed with Shamuel, and Kent was frightened by their expressions. He said that he strives to be a victim as little as possible. He did not want to get involved in conflicts with people, even if it seemed cowardly. He also agreed with Kent's position, and Shamuel later said that he understood his point of view and suggested to observe the situation for now. Gasfer added that as soon as the next day they take the saddle, the rest of the trail should be laid on it. He said he would accompany Kent to Chester and stay longer if needed. The next day before the end, Kent came with his companions. He noticed Hector and greeted him, saying they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Hector saw Hastur and wondered if they knew each other. After a brief confusion, Hector invited him to follow him to a certain place. Once there, they stood by the window and eavesdropped on the conversation between the man from the previous night and the guild master. The master said that such actions had not occurred in the field, and that making deals was left to the discretion of each adventurer. The man replied that they were ready to pay, asked what the matter was, and then specified the amount. Suddenly, they offered to pay twice as much. The guildmaster stood up and said that the matter was not about money, but that the Adventurers Guild was primarily an organization of mutual aid, not a power structure that issues orders unilaterally. One can recognize the words of the guildmaster. The man sneered, called it ridiculous, and said that the guildmaster seemed not to understand profits and losses. That was why the guild was in such a difficult position. He said the conversation was over and was about to leave. When he was leaving, the guildmaster told him not to show up anymore. The man returned to the window and asked if that amount would be enough. Kent asked if the guildmaster had talked about him. The guildmaster said not to worry, and said that he always thought Kent would be noticed sooner or later because he was too bright. Did Kent apologize? They asked if the company Yussel Trading was important in that world. The guildmaster explained that at the core of everything were the rest of them and Chester's trading companies, and Upon had a completely different company. Hastur suggested avoiding Chester Kent and going east instead, and Kent agreed, saying that sounded like a plan because he didn't want to have trouble. Hector asked Kenta if he had ever thought about selling his familiars to avoid the Yussel Trading Company, and Kenta firmly replied that he was not going to sell any of his familiars. Hector, smiling, said that Kent truly valued his familiars, and he was glad that they all had such a wonderful master. Then the guildmaster stood up and said that it seemed the troubles were over for now, so he asked Ken if they could leave. Ken thanked Hector and left the place. Hector told him that when hard times come, they would help each other, and insisted that he hurry and go. Then Kenta headed to Fort Shaw and asked if he could stay until the saddle for Fort Sirius was ready, and Fort replied that it was not a problem because it would take a little more time. He offered them lunch, and Kenta gladly agreed, saying it would be wonderful. Fort served a dish from his hometown, stew with sausage and potatoes. Hasturite noticed that the taste was very German. Kent said it was tasty, and Fort added that beer would go perfectly with the dish. Then Fort put a belt on Sirius, and Kenta was just about to leave. Fort raised his fist, wishing that the bonds be with him, and Kent stood aside, thanking Fort for the help. When they left the city, Has suggested they move a little further away. Kenta is now writing about Max. Notice how the rope suddenly appears around Nina's neck. Thanks to quick reaction, he cut the rope, and Kenta wondered what was happening. A group of horsemen appeared. One of them said that the cats had already been marked. We'll catch them quickly. Angard Kenta drew his sword, but someone quickly told him not to use it yet. First, they needed to move away from the city. Ken has to say that they had no other choice but to run. When they were running, is it possible to find a place near the lake? To note that they said they would have to jump over it. He ordered his familiar to use all his strength and jump over. They managed to clear the lake, but the pursuers eventually fell into the sand. The man who was chasing the familiars was among the pursuers and shouted to Kentaku to wait. He, however, assured Kenta that they had managed to break away from the pursuers, but Kenta was worried whether everything would be all right. Gasfer asked if Kenta was really worried about their enemies, noting that it was strange to see him so anxious. Ken replied that the pursuers would have a hard time breaking free because the sand was shallow, and since they were not alone, everything would be fine. When he was about to say more, he noticed Hector approaching on horseback. Help! Hector greeted them, and Kenta noticed his arrival. Hastur asked Hector they could leave further matters to him. Hector agreed and said he would send a message to the guild and help would arrive soon. Kenta thanked Hector and said he could not thank him enough. Hector replied that Restum was their hometown, and if anything happened, they would always help other travelers. Kenta agreed without hesitation, wishing that their connection would remain strong. When he thought about his city, at the place he was supposed to protect, he felt a slight envy towards Hector and his group. Hastur then suggested they head east towards Upon. Kent agreed and was ready to move forward. That same night in other parts of the Adventurers Guild, Hastur went to meet with the guildmaster. The old man asked about Kenta. Hastur replied that he had gone on a small side quest. The old man remarked that it was a real wild adventure, added that Hector laughed uncontrollably, and that he would also like to see it. Hastur was holding a little girl. A shaman sat on his shoulder, and he was worried about possible problems later. The old man replied that he did not know. Hastur sighed and regretted that they could not just go out and confront the enemies directly, and the old man added that they were not stupid enough to raise a fuss. Then they asked if the guild could help them with anything. They insisted that the guild not interfere. When Hastur was leaving, the little girl asked if he knew that they were being followed. At that moment, two men appeared before Hastur. They apologized, then threatened to kill him. Hasp immediately wondered if they were clients of the Yussel Trading Company, and quickly realized it was a trick. With a quick move, he needed to subdue both men. In a fit of anger, one of them growled, grabbing him by the collar. He scolded them for behaving like fools, and not even being able to assess the strength of their opponent. Frightened men quickly ran away. Gasfer wondered if that was all, and Shane would thank him for handling the situation. Then he turned to the little girl Sharam and asked for help. She agreed. The scene shifts to the castle, where the dragon sat on the throne and told Clarice that he knew well about his numerous misdeeds. The dragon said he would not allow Clarice to abandon his duties, and that he must answer for his laziness and greed. Trembling with fear, Clarice begged for mercy. The dragon replied that if he stopped forgiving, he must immediately make amends for all his faults. Surprised, Clarice said that this was a divine revelation. The dragon ordered him to cease all dealings with the trading company Eustel and immediately free all slaves. Meanwhile, Shembel was with the dragon along with Shurim. He thanked Shurim for the help. Shurim advised them to be a little more cautious. Shembel agreed and said he needed to monitor the situation from time to time. Then he announced that he was returning to Kenta and entrusted Shurum to handle the matter during his absence. The next morning, while Kenta was still asleep, someone tried to wake him. He wondered if that person was alone, or maybe Lapine or Shamil, but when he woke up, he realized that the matter was serious. She said that she found a way to wake him up. Ken has to remember that the floor was so fluffy. He got up to greet everyone and came out of his tent. Ken noticed that Hastur went to rest yesterday, and upon seeing another tent, said that he did not expect Hastur to have bought a tent too. And Hastur replied that it seemed like a good idea, so he bought one as well. Ken will then set the table and ask Sakura to bring bread. He has to put on it everything he likes and enjoy. There is a wide selection and it can be supplemented so that people can enjoy different flavors. It was embarrassing. Smiling because it was a tasting, Kenta served them something to eat. When asked what it was, Kenta explained that it was butter with sugar, which he often ate in childhood. Hastur tried it and found it tasty. Kenta then also gave them sweets and explained that they were similar to cookies from others. He said that they were incredibly delicious and praised Kenta for having a good taste. Then they reviewed the map, and Kenta said they decided to bypass Chester and head east to the pond. He wondered how long it would take. Shamu replied that they were currently about 200 rills west of Restum. Kenta was not sure if rills was a unit of distance here. Shemagal explained it simply. 1 kilometer was equal to 1 rill. From Restum to Chester was 1,000 rills, and to east upon 2,000 rills. Kenta then asked if they used layout to measure something smaller than a kilometer, which corresponds to 1 meter. Sham answered that half a layout, and anything smaller was measured approximately by eye. He also explained units of weight. Kenta thought it was 1,800 rills east, and while he was thinking about how long different creatures would need for the journey, Shamil said that for people it would take about 18 days on horseback or 40 days on foot. If you bypass Chester, the journey becomes even longer. Shia Mill then asked if Kenta wanted to learn about the transfer doors. He pointed to 25 places on the map and said he had visited them all. Ken asked if that meant he could move from one door to another. Shamiel confirmed and explained that these were special doors accessible only to certain people. Shame will suggest exiting through door number 2, which was near Chester. Kent agreed and said that it was incredibly convenient to instantly reach Bison. Sorrow asked if they should go now. He might have hesitated, but then agreed. But he also recalled that he once promised to explore the world with his familiars and enjoy the journey. He told Shamil that he wanted to travel, not take the shorter path. Shamil nodded because he expected such an answer. Shamil said that he might set off by sea. It seemed they decided not to use the door for transfer and to experience the journey together. The familiars went hunting. Kent looked at the map and said that the country was very large. His homeland, compared to it, was smaller than Restum and Istapon. He thought it was a small island state, but there were many islands and countries, and Hastur explained that it was a multicultural world. Kent added that his country was relatively peaceful, but not a paradise, because there were many international wars. Hashtag responded, explaining that the administration was urban, but it was still considered one nation. Ken found the idea of a single nation interesting. Shameful noted that wars between states were expensive, said that the army was primarily engaged in security and maintenance, and did not want conflicts to arise in the world. Kenta and Shamil both agreed that peace is very important. When Kenta saw that his family was returning, he called everyone to go. He then asked Hastur if he had used anything for long trips. Hastur replied that he usually walked or rode, but for emergencies, he borrowed a large eagle. Kenta was surprised to hear this and recalled the 4th eagle. He explained that the eagle was cherished by a friend of the former god of war, and Kenta was surprised that a god was involved here. He felt some aura and thought it might be Falco, and also wondered if the eagle would allow him to sit on it. Kent returned to Falco and asked if he could ask for a favor a little later. Together with his familiar Sai, he sat on Falco, watching if they were all in place. Barry, who was hiding, suddenly appeared and said he could fly and would follow them, and Kenta was not sure but told Barry that he really could join, while they traversed the sky. A giant eagle appeared, asked Kenta if he is the same man from another world. Shami immediately recognized the eagle and greeted him, saying that they had not seen each other for a long time. The eagle thanked Kenti for saving their world. Kenta asked the eagle to call him simply a representative of Bo and to express gratitude to Samuel. Shembel was surprised that Kenta was pushing him into the spotlight. The eagle wished them a safe journey and then flew away. While they continued to fly, Ken said that it is wonderful to travel so quickly and that they will arrive in a matter of minutes. Shamil called him and asked him to look ahead. He suggested going there. They realized that they had reached the transfer doors. Shamgal explained that doors are usually invisible and asked Kent to close his eye and blink twice. When Kent tried to follow the instructions, the door shifted and turned to stone. When he touched the doors, he noticed that they were flickering. Shamul confirmed that this was the normal appearance of the doors. Then he told Kenti to blink 2 more times. After that, the door appeared again and became visible. Sham will explain that technically it was an illusion created to hide the door from prying eyes. Unlike Kenti's world, here the substance was less stable and often did not correspond to how it looked. Kenti replied that it was normal and invited them to enter. Shamu ordered him to touch the door with his right hand, which triggered the mechanism that led them down the stairs. They all began to descend the steep stairs. It is impossible not to notice that it was very long and steep. He was told not to stumble. When they enter the room, it could not seem like he was in an elevator. He noticed doors with numbers from 21 to 25 written on them. After pressing the button, and they all went inside. Samuel then asked Ken to press the button for their stop. He knew exactly what to do and did it easily. Hashtag asked if he was familiar with such mechanisms. Kenta replied that he was used to it. Hashtag nodded, impressed, and said it was perfect. Eventually they reached their destination. When they left the room, a feeling of shame suggested to them that the stairs led to door number 2. They went up the stairs, and finally appeared, noted that they had reached the first sanctuary. Kenta wondered if it was to the east and if they could get there. When they entered the city, frightened familiars of Kentis began to run away. Soon the guards arrived and blocked Kentis's path, and asked if he was attacking the east. They warned him that such actions would not be forgiven. Kenta calmly explained that they were not enemies but adventurers. The gods might not believe them, but he must step forward and ask the guards to calm down. When Ryan recognized Hastur, he said that he had grown significantly since their last meeting, and Hastur thanked him, and replied that Kenta was a true adventurer, as were all his companions, so they should be allowed to pass. Although the guards were still hesitant, Kent turned around and showed his risky cards. They were reassured that everything would be safe. Ryan agreed. They apologized for the show of force in Sutton and welcomed Kenta to West Apon. They finally entered the city. Kenta noticed that it was even bigger than Restum. Hastur suggested going to the guild first. Kenta asked if Hastur was also familiar with Eastapon. Hastur replied that he visited it every 2 to 3 years, but this was his first arrival from ground level. Kenta then asked if Hastur had flown in. Gasfer looked surprised and explained that there was a wide river between them. Kent immediately guessed that they could row across by boat, and Gasfer nodded in confirmation. He added that tomorrow he would accompany Kent because it was already getting dark. They kept walking until they reached the guilds. The guy at the reception greeted them and asked what brought them here. Kent showed his adventurer card and said that he wants to register as an adventurer. The receptionist took the card and inserted it into the machine, and returned it to Kenti. When it moved away, Kenton noticed that it resembled a scorecard. Then Kenta asked to use the guild's premises, namely 2 large rooms, and the boy agreed to accommodate him. When they were about to leave, Kenton noticed that Hastur reached out his hand to Minnie, as if showing tenderness. Kent advised everyone to rest for the night and said that the next day they would head east. Kenta woke up and greeted his familiars. He felt that the room was very cozy and he liked it very much. He entered the room where Hastur was, greeted him good morning, and asked about breakfast, and Hastur said he had already eaten. Kent also decided to eat and told Hastur that he wanted to explore the city and buy supplies, so Hastur agreed to show him the city. Kenta then suggested selling precious stones when they reached the shopkeeper, and then they agreed to buy jewelry, even when Kent said there were many of them. At that moment, a lady approached and greeted Hastur, saying they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Ken considered her very attractive. She introduced herself as Diamond, a guildmaster. She inquired if Kenta was the same guy with the stones, and if he could handle 2,000 stones. Kenta wondered if there were rare ones among them, and Diamond told him to just give her all of them. Later they failed to present many precious stones, but he noticed that Hashtar Singh was doing something. He asked what was going on. Hashtag explained that someone was following him, but there was no hostility. Kenta was shocked and asked if he noticed. He wondered if it was a young company. They confirmed this, and then I did not notice any tension, and asked what happened. Hashtag replied that it would be safer if they went east with Restum to avoid the young people. Diamond wondered if someone was following them. She said she had heard troubling things about them, and although they were quite pompous, she even heard that their branch was closing. One could think that it was not a big deal. When they walked the streets, it seems people are afraid of Kentis's familiars. He calmed them down, telling his people that it was completely safe and they should not worry about the others' reaction. Later they stopped by the old woman's stall to eat something, and she greeted them warmly. Kenton noticed that they were serving rice. The woman explained that it was a soft rice soup, and he thought it was rice porridge. She gave him a bowl so that he would eat. When Ken bit off, he became quite emotional. Looking more closely, he noticed that the dish had seafood broth and a sweet aroma of grain. The taste was so wonderful that he was moved by this dish and immediately decided to stock up more. Then Kenta gathered all the ingredients. Saying that the food was extremely soothing, he bought many meat buns and rice. Aqua and Sakura then cleaned up all the items. Hastur said there was another guild he wanted Kenta to check. Kenta was surprised to learn about another guild. Hastur then led him and showed where it was.